call to order? I'm just.
We're calling this meeting to
Oh, we are
order.
calling
You
it,
can name
okay.
your name.
Yep. Okay, we are calling the meeting to order for the ad hoc school board meeting for February 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Normandy Villa in order to discuss the superintendent evaluation tool. Please state your name. I am Lisa Harrell.
Steve Paredes.
Merle Huckabee.
Marks. Okay. All right, so the way you received a document from me, just to say how I wanted to kind of run it to make sure that we at least are covering and get everyone's input here, and then I will be documenting everything we talk about so that we can move forward. I have it in 4 categories. First is to be, and it's for everyone's benefit here, but Meryl, also for yours, because you weren't here, give a brief history of how we kind of got to this tool. And then we'll review the content of the tool, so we'll go through and do the content first. And then we will do a second review, which is actually the evaluation process. There's steps in the tool itself, and we can talk about that. And then format, so those are formatting questions, just kind of the way it's laid out, just so we can have kind of perfectly, all the aesthetics are nice.
Mhm.
And then finally, if there are any other questions, concerns, or recommendations that were not addressed in the first few reviews, we can talk about that. And then finally, I will summarize then or document everything that we're talking about here, and I'll review it back to you. If there are any documented non-material revisions, that means things like draft take out, that doesn't change the actual content of the review document, if any that we're going to take forward as far as recommendations about material revisions, and then document any revisions or questions that may be raised that we would not be presenting at the final committee, but just to make sure we have everyone's comments documented. Sound fair, or is there anything else left off?
No, sounds good.
Okay. Starting with the beginning, the tool that we will be reviewing tonight is a tool that was developed last year, starting with a committee that was put together to actually implement an actual tool for the evaluation of the superintendent. In that evaluation process, we took in a lot of things, including several different types of tools that we've used that we got from the IASB and off their website, best practices. We got input from the superintendent as well, and then also from our IASB rep, who came in and talked to us a little bit more about best practices, something we should or should not do. The end was a tool, that's it. And we established what the purpose of the tool was, what the intent of the tool was, and that being, and I think it's actually in it for 4 reasons. To make plain accountability, the superintendent board relationship, superintendent professional development, and contractual and compensation consideration. Basically, Meryl and everyone here, this was simply a tool to have us, because I think his contract required for us to do an evaluation,
Well,
but it doesn't say how.
Yeah,
Correct?
I think by state law, you have to do an evaluation
okay.
every year for a multi-year contract.
Okay, but it was just kind of there, and then they have a tool. So tonight, we are going to be looking at the tool and the tool only. This is not an evaluation time, nor will we be talking about any content. This is a tool that can be used, and should be used for any superintendent that is in the role. Any questions from anybody, or here remember something different?
No.
Okay, moving on then to review 1. You should have a copy of the actual tool. What I'd like to do is literally go through this page by page, so that if there's any questions around, again, we're doing content, not necessarily process, so we'll do that second, but this is the content. One of the changes, or one of the things we did, was make sure that it did have a cover page that always stated that this was the Flossmoor School District 161, when the tool was actually adapted, and then when it was revised. So it was submitted initially 10/14/14, and then it was revived 1/12/15. If there are any revisions that take place today, we will also include this date going forward. Please go to page 1. On page 1 is the superintendent name, the board member name, the review period from and to, and the date of the review. For purposes of this, I will not go into process, but all of this information is then uploaded to Google Docs. We'll talk about process, but I want you to kind of know when you're putting in information, you're able to type it in, okay?
It's not,
It's not Google Doc, what is it?
no, it's just a Word document.
It's just a Word document?
Yeah, there was a Google Doc last year, but
Right.
it's deleted.
The Google Doc, okay. So when we talk about process, I'll have to ask that question again about how to make sure from a content or process standpoint how we're doing that. Okay, that was the question I was asking before. Okay. Okay. The first page is simply a cover page that outlines right now, again, the purpose, accountability, board superintendent relationship, superintendent professional development, contractual compensation consideration. Are there any questions, concerns, or anything around the purpose? Everyone's fine? No
Nope.
changes there? Okay. The next one currently says, this draft evaluation form is comprised of 3 parts, the 3 parts being the district goals, the board expectations, and performance standards based upon the ISLIC standards. Are there any questions around those 3 parts? I know that one of the things we need to change is take out draft.
Mhm.
Right.
That's one update, yes.
No, I guess this is fine. One of the, it actually says, it's not, board expectation.
Okay.
It's actually, oh, it is board expectations, part 2. This is optional. So if there were,
Do they put optional?
yeah, I would put optional. If there's additional things like going back to the tree thing, if, you know, it's, okay, we have to green this place out, we need 100 trees,
Yep, we can
you
put that
know, that would be something. But since we don't, there's nothing there.
in. Okay, Maryland,
No
in
trees.
history too.
No trees.
That section was in a lot of the best practices, like a lot of the ones I got, and it was, this is optional, so some don't have it, but we decided last year to keep it in, just in case it ever is to be used. We didn't use it last year, and probably wouldn't this year, because we have no other things that we've ever talked about. Okay. So I have thus far in this section, take out the word draft, add optional after board expectations.
And what is, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
What does the SLIC stand for?
You would ask me that, and I forgot.
Illinois State,
It's,
Wait, I'll tell you.
prudential.
We know it should just probably be,
Spelled out?
yeah,
Yep.
no one knows what it is.
I can tell you. I never does spell
or,
out.
you know what, put ISLIC in parentheses and spell it out before that.
Okay, yes, this is spelled out. All right, spell out. Yes.
You're gonna make these corrections?
Yeah, I'm actually keeping notes so that I know what we're doing, and then I'll make sure everybody has them. Standards. All right, great. Are there any questions about the content there and the of what's in it?
I just have one question. So for part 1, I know district goals. Is this the part 2 where we would include, I know that represents the district goals, but the superintendent
Well, that's,
goals?
yeah, you might.
Yeah,
An evaluation, we have the strategic plan
Right.
that we have. We just went into a transition for that.
Mhm.
My goals right now are set up for the strategic plan we just completed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some transformation on that, but those are really, what this talk about is superintendent goals, this document.
Right. So,
The optional place, when we talked about this, and when I got the feedback too from IASB, is that if there are things that the board outside of your goals that you talked about in the beginning of the year that may not be included in the strategic plan, the multi-year strategic plan, that you, gives you an opportunity to have that conversation, but it needs to be added in one upfront. And we haven't talked about anything additional this year, but it gives that, that flexibility to do so. So keeping it in just leaves a place for it. You don't have to use it, it is optional, but that there is an expectation that it is there.
so really, this is really, I guess that's what I'm really asking, is if this is really the superintendent goals
Mhm.
and but for the district, But it's
Are you asking, should that be spelled out better so that we?
Well, that's what I guess I'm asking. Okay.
How it
But-
works is you have the district goals, strategic plan, superintendent should mirror those, or be underneath that. Then from
Yeah.
there, my administrator should be underneath there, and then when we evaluate the teachers' goals should be associated
So
with
it's
that.
overall.
Yeah.
So she's asking, should we rewrite the district goals to say superintendent goals for the district? Is that clearer? Because she didn't have that question.
Well, I think for the purpose of the tool, that it should stay district goals, because as Director Dresser Scraggy pointed out, his goals are really a reflection of the direction that he gets from the strategic goals. And since which is in his contract.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones that are used to populate these district goals. And there are things that we agree upon in the summertime,
Okay.
so that we're clear from one contract year to the next.
Okay. Is that?
You could put a slash,
Yeah,
superintendent
I mean,
goals.
you could put an asterisk and have a footnote. I mean, that's,
Yeah, no, I was not to complicate anything, but I just remember seeing, when looking at this and then remembering what goals that the superintendent had submitted. And I know the district is an input, so it was just a question, not to complicate anything.
Steve, when you say there are new goals, could you repeat what you said about the goals?
I'm sorry,
You said that we set, but you said something about setting different goals in the summer?
in regards to this,
I don't know, so I'm asking
Okay.
what you said.
the district goals are reflective of superintendent goals are reflective of district goals which come from our strategic goals. And so, for the purpose of this, we set those in the summertime where we agree on that, really at the onset of a contract year, so that going forth into one contract year, it's clear what's expected, so that, you know, when we're evaluating, well, did it happen or not, you know, are we making progress toward that, you know, what can we do in the meantime, that it's something that was made clear in the beginning.
Do you
okay?
have those goals that we agreed on this summer?
Those are his contract goals.
But they change every summer?
No.
This information is actually in this document, so. you can-
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I must be misunderstanding you. That you said strategic plan, but then you said his goals change in
No,
the
I didn't
summer.
say they change. I said that I'll repeat it again. The district goals are based on strategic goals. The superintendent goals are based on the district goals. And in the case of the ones that are in the tool right now, these are based on the ones that are in his contract. So those are what we agreed upon over the summer. You follow?
Were they different from the multi-year contract goals? Did we put new
They're the
goals in?
same ones.
So they don't change every summer? It's a so those goals stay I'm just trying to, Merle was asking a question. and I-
They stay until the board says, and we have to go through a whole contract change if we
Okay,
want to do
but
that.
he's on a multi-year contract, so we're not changing his goals
No,
every
they're
summer.
the exact same as they were last year.
Okay, so just to be clear, his goals haven't changed since we signed the original
No.
contract? And they won't change during the term of the contract?
No,
No, they won't change?
no, they won't change.
Okay, so Merle, his goals stay the same throughout the entire multi-year contract, they're not adjusted every summer?
Okay.
But they're clarified every summer. And if something comes up, and this is really where the board expectations comes in, where if we want something different, using some hypothetical example of, we decide we want to make this a greener campus, and, you know, we agree on that, and we move forward, and that becomes an expectation, that, that's something that would fall into board expectations, above the district goals or / the superintendent goals. Does that make sense?
It's just an expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not associated with goals.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, we're good, this it?
Mhm.
Okay, so we move past purpose, we move past the three parts. The procedure piece here, if you are okay with that, I would like to table this until the second part when we talk about process, because that's what this is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm look forward to
There's
talking
a
about,
lot
I
of-
think there's some things
There's
that,
I actually started, when I started reading through it, I kind of created this, I'll give you all my notes and things like that. So that's fine, but that's why I don't want to stymie this conversation around
Yeah.
content, and then we'll come back to procedure. But as far as how this is, the first page simply lays out, again, purpose, what is included, and we'll have the procedures on it.
Mhm.
And then this part we're going to come back to, okay?
sounds good.
Okay. Going to page 2. Again, one of the things we looked at is the ratings. So there are 4 ratings here: excellent, proficient, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory. And then there are rating definitions there. Are there any questions regarding the ratings themselves or the definition? Craig?
No, those are fine.
Okay. Christine? Steve?
Mhm.
I'm being very clear, so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure I'm checking off, okay? Make sure everybody's voice is heard. Okay, let's move on then to page number 3. This is part 1, the superintendent's goals. This is to give you an idea, Merrill, as well. His goal will be in here. I'll say his because it's superintendent. The superintendent's goals will be here. It gives an opportunity for a self-assessment, and then also for the board to give a rating based upon their rating scale, and then provide evidence to support, basically being able to give, with the superintendent providing evidence to support the rating and then comments from board members. One of the expectations, and I'll go into the process piece, but that there are no blind comments. So you make comments and then, your name is attached to them so you can see where all of it come from. Okay?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, no,
That's
yeah,
good.
no blind comments, okay. So you have goal 1, you have goal 2, and I mean, you've seen these, you've seen the things, but you can go through that, so I'm not gonna, I'll stop the conversation for those, but if anybody has any questions about them, we can talk, yeah.
Yeah, so for example, Merle will go 1 or something. It says, see, in the goals here, we have park now instead of ISAT.
Mhm.
So we've had a park presentation, for example, so there's been a couple, there's gonna be another one coming down. So for example, evidence, I would show, a park presentation on that.
Okay. So in here you see, you have goal 1, goal 2. Go over to page 4. I'm sorry, any questions regarding before I go over to page 3?
Is it important, I know we can't change obviously we can't change the goals, but, because the ISAT isn't given anymore, is it valuable to, I know we can't rewrite the language, but to note on this somehow, because it may not even be park
Next time?
before your contract expires, that you may change it again.
It could be state assessment.
Could it probably
That's part
shop,
of it.
yeah.
So we should, you're saying if we, in the future, do that, or?
I don't know if we'd want to adjust that language to just reflect state assessments instead of ISAT.
Can we do that right now?
No,
It wouldn't
we
change-
can't.
I don't think we can't change it, can we?
No.
No.
I think that's something that if you,
You will see park.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that for our purposes, since it's our evaluation, we might want to note on there, or the
Equivalent
state
state.
equivalent.
Of the current state, whatever it
Yeah.
is, this year?
I think it's something we might, it just avoids any confusion of anyone looking at this and saying, well, there wasn't an ISAT. I don't
But
think anybody would. I
That may
know-
not be the goal, though, at the next contract.
Well, but
But
for
not
the
for this
duration
one.
of your contract,
Mhm.
this is what we have to go with, and I know that's the contract language, so we can't, and this reflects that, but I just feel it might be worthwhile just to indicate that we aren't using an ISAT any longer.
Can we put a star? A star doesn't mess up the like literally when I'm sitting
Change-
back there.
Making a
just
note
put
of
star?
this doesn't change your.
Yeah, it doesn't,
No.
it's just a piece of paper, so
Doesn't
that
change anything.
So
No,
can I
I'm
state
fine,
that?
yeah.
Say, okay, all right, so say state
It's gonna be
evaluation.
hard to give a report on ISAT.
Okay,
They were
current,
great.
so I can
They were
say,
better than
I
anyone
wish
else's
we had-
scores.
I
Our
wish we had
ISAT
a better-
scores
yeah.
exceeded anyone else's ISAT scores.
can I
Pardon me,
say,
I'm sorry.
What was that, current standardized?
It's state assessments, right?
Illinois.
It's just Illinois state assessment.
current Illinois state assessment? And this is gonna be star. Okay, star, current Illinois state assessment. Okay. Okay. Ready? Any
Well,
questions?
it avoids any embarrassment for we'd hate to have someone fill out the assessment and we do not know that we
That there's
are
no
using
ISAT
the
and thus
ISAT,
there's
and
no
we'd
ISAT.
hate to see someone
Where is that ISAT?
unnecessarily embarrassed by it.
Okay.
could be part of the evaluation.
Where'd they go?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's, okay.
Yeah, that's-
Any other questions or reviews on this page? That was good, catch. Okay, got it. Okay, going over to 4. Again, this is written like this because it's in paper, but Merle, the way this is, the more you type, you're not limited to this little box.
Right.
Okay. So this just goes over into that page. Goal 3 is on here as well. Again, the part that says evidence and then board comments. Please go over to page, any questions about this? It's kind of repeating, but I need to ask the question.
Goal 3?
Anything on here? No. Page 5 is a continuation, that is goal 4. Again, stated goal 4, ability to rate. Wait a minute, there's something I'm missing here. No, that's not right, that's right. Okay, ability to rate,
Which one?
I was wrong, page 5. Yeah.
That's good.
Goal 4, evidence, and then comments. Keep go. Page 6. Goal 5 is on here. Here's one thing, during the duration of the 2012-2013 school year, the study shall be completed, so that's accomplished. A lot of these, again, are multi-year, so we can't change the multi-year, but, you see that in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the multi-year, there's short and long-term goals.
Mhm.
This is one, but it was short for that, but then the Parker project just finished, well, we're not 100% done yet, we're waiting on landscaping, but it's pretty much done to close out the books on it.
So we
Just
can't
don't let that
change the
throw you.
language,
In his contract.
so we can't even definitely change it on here when things have been updated, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that we probably wouldn't, my perspective, we would not change the language if there's anything like we need as a star, which I think is a good idea, or even if there's no, this was accomplished, we're just talking about whatever, but the goal is a goal, so you'll be speaking about his accomplishments this year, because it's a year-to-year evaluation.
Does that make
I-
it difficult for board members to answer the question?
I think if you
when
just put a,
it's not a question?
I think if you just put a star down there,
That's why I'm asking, do we star it, if there's something that says that this part has been completed, like,
Yeah,
Craig
they
was
would-
saying that Parker is still, we're kind of working on Parker, or if this is
You know,
completed and not relevant this year.
Somebody like, I'm just throwing this out.
This is.
Well, it's still, we're still
It's-
doing life safety stuff.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Merle.
Okay, well, just me, just looking at this form, just being new, if I knew nothing else, this 2012, 2013 school year, do we take that out, or, I mean, because I can't assess nothing for 2012, 2013, even though
Right.
safety
Right.
is ongoing.
I think this is a good example of something that's part of a longer-term goal,
Mhm.
so that, you know what I mean, so that it's, and this is really what part of yearly evaluation looks at, is, you know, where are we, you know, in this, if we've accomplished, great, you know, we're ahead of the game.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
It's, I think that we should, you could probably put a star with a little note, footnote saying that, you know, this had been accomplished already in a previous year and evaluated, you know, for finality, you know, we're satisfied that we have met this long-term goal. I mean,
So-
just to clarify, but I think that it's, I mean,
I like what you're saying and where we're going, but this is something from a process standpoint, again, I'm not gonna, we'll save on this, but ideally, I believe that a review of these goals as they are right now should have been done at the beginning of the year, because when we would catch stuff like this, so that we could revise and say, okay, we're not revising your contract, but the goal for this year, we can honestly say, this one didn't even make sense now, so we're taking this is off, or to say this was accomplished in 2013 or something. So part of the process has got to be an annual review with the, because this document should look exactly the same at the beginning of the year. It shouldn't even, like, we shouldn't be starring anything now that we didn't, it's goofy, I mean, because it's the park,
Right.
right?
You know, how about we do this? Instead of putting it on the actual tool, even for the park thing, we just have notes, and that we can give that to the board. So we had the park, right, and then if you had a concern about 12, 13,
yeah, I think just.
because I don't
like-
think you want to put it on the actual tool.
Yeah, I think just, yeah, like, that's a great idea. I think just like as a,
An addendum?
yeah, an addendum to say, you know, these are things that, you know, are relevant now, you know, in terms of the date. And, if there's any questions, you know, just ask and we can clarify.
That'd be the easier.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
It's not a big deal.
yeah, it's just, you know, I mean, we all realize, okay, yeah, you know, here it is.
But having said that, we should be doing this at the beginning of the year, so those changes and those.
This should be
addendums-
done in June. or-
Yeah, June, beginning of the year, June.
Well, that's the
Beginning
beginning,
of the
yeah.
year. Yeah, so that's when we really should look at this document and say, okay, that's where those was in there last year, now let's look at them this year, does it still make sense? Is the wording still right? Is this what we're still doing? Any questions? Is there any optional, are there any board expectations we want to add in this year, right? So that should be done at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Because the whole thing is, there's no gotcha moment, because then coming, the weird stuff we had to deal with last year, and it was, the stuff that's now on paper, it's, hold on, is this a gotcha tool? So what are we using this for? Is this something that is gonna be one person, this is one voice speaking, you know, when am I gonna get these?
Mhm.
And so, to keep in line with that piece of it, because if it's supposed to be helping to strengthen the board superintendent relationship, there should be no surprises anywhere along the way. Okay? So that's a really good idea, and then from the process standpoint, that's one of the things we can close out to say, each June, I'm not gonna talk about process, mess up my own stuff.
Sure.
All right, so content though.
Moving on.
Moving on, but content though, we talked about, including an addendum if there, to note any changes, year to year, goal wording, or if things are completed, okay?
I think that'll take.
That was good. All right, so any other questions? Page 6, moving on. Okay.
Just, Merle, real quick, so you know that, so, for example, it says, shall begin implementing a study from information gathered through the health life. That was done, was it last year? It was approved and sent to ISBE, the actual study. You get 10 years to do that. So last year we finished all the A's, and now we have 3 to 5 years working the B's. So that's what you would see with that as we move on.
Mr. Brzezinski was, I think he did a really good job. Wasn't he in charge of it?
Who?
Or did Mr. Brzezinski, who presented all of the ABC list? It was Mr. Brzezinski, wasn't it? Did a really good job.
Scott.
Was Scott?
Scott, and our architect.
Okay, he did. Okay, I just remember, they did a really good job of the ABCs, and they really, like, I wanted to move some of the stuff. Ooh, fun stuff.
Yeah, in fact, Merle, if you want to see that, I can bring it up for you in older
If you'd
presentation.
like to, I think it would be good
Yeah.
for you to see. All right, move forward. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so that is part 1, strictly the goals. The part 2 of the board expectations, as you see here, this is blank, not to be, excluded from the document, kept in, but we chose and did not talk about or have included any board expectations for year 1 and not for year 2. If we choose to put them in for year 3, or we're going forward for the superintendent, the expectation is that these will be put in at the beginning of in June. Starts in the beginning of the year, okay? All right. Any questions about this?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. Page 8 starts part 3, superintendent performance standards. This is that ISLIC that I have to go back and find what it means. And the basic, if I can just break it down as simple as possible, the goals are what you do, the ISLIC standards are how you do it. So you look about it, it's the standards of how they expect every superintendent to.
They're essentially professional standards by the,
Illinois School Board, it's blah, blah,
hold
blah.
on, it's actually the, here, I'll look it up. What is it again?
LLC.
ILC.
ISLLC.
IS.
Actually, they should be married together with the goals. The ISLIC standard, you can't do one without the other, basically. And that's the question you and I talked about last year about weighting those. I mean, the goals are the ones that have they're heavy. I mean, that's what you do.
And I think that there was a little bit of a, not a little bit, I think that there was not necessarily 100% agreement on that piece of it, to say it is as important to, as the board spoke about, that as important as the how you do it, as not just the what you do. So that's why those are separated, and that's why those were, let's do the rating on the what and then the how. And I don't think we ended up with a weighted, like 70, like this got heavier weighting. I'm sure we didn't do that. We didn't provide heavier weighting to the what than this part.
No, I think it was equal
Yeah,
weighting.
right, it's
Which
equal. I know you disagree.
goes, yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. Are we still waiting on you, or are we gonna?
I can look it up.
Okay. Because I actually have it, let me see, let me find it. Summary. Okay. I'm sorry, I think I'm gonna have to tell you about. It's like ISLLC.
Yeah.
ISLIC standards, here we go, ISLIC standards. Okay, it is ISLIC standards, all right. The
Illinois. I'm sorry.
Interstate School Leaders Licenses Consortium Standards Professional Conduct.
You want to, should we write it down, or?
Let me write it down, let me see, I can copy it.
Say it again.
The Interstate School Leaders Licensure Consortium, ISLICs, professional standards. Did you write it all down? I'm gonna send it to you too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interstate School Leaders License Consortium.
Licensure.
Or licensure.
Licensure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. And And I think I ended up having something wrong. I started with a different state, like I had it wrong, like from Barrows
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
I was like so excited to find stuff like that. I was like, "Ooh."
Oregon. That's
It was Oregon.
Yeah.
I was excited. I found fun.
right.
But we ended up going to the IASB and kind of coming out with these, so, this is that.
These are basically, well, the same thing, and you have the indicators listed, and what I do is I give you evidence of that.
Okay, so then there's standard, and I think there may be 7 standards, I can't remember, which is 6?
Yep.
Okay. So there's nothing different there, so the part 3 is performance standards, we state what the standard is, give an opportunity for the indicator, kind of what does that look like, what's been accomplished, provides evidence, you provide the comment. Okay? So any questions about that? Go to page 9, you can read standard 2. We did not change any wording at all, this is straight from ISLIC, so this was not
Okay.
anything we made up. No, we didn't make it up on her yet. I've been known to do something like that, I get excited, so I'm gonna do that here.
Be creative.
Be creative, yeah. All right, so page 9, is standard 2.
Herald standards.
Yeah, right. Right,
Heralds.
leadership sta- The Herald leadership
That's right.
standards.
The Herald,
There you
Herald
go.
Herald.
Yeah, they're in my house, they are hanging in my house, they don't, you know, okay.
You have your
I do. It's not house rules, it's
House rules.
Herald leadership.
Herald leadership.
Mhm. Like what I expect when you walk in the store. Standard 3 is on page 10. And as you're reviewing these, if everybody's reviewing these, can you make sure that you're looking at the standards and then understanding the indicators? Christine, fill you in just one little, not little, but one change that we made. Instead of starring any changes, what we decided to do is that we're gonna have an addendum that, so that we can capture if there's any changes on any page. So Craig had just made the comment that instead of having them write in the tool and chaining it right there, just making sure we start and having a list of if there's anything, page so-and-so, current standards, things like that. So if there's any changes throughout, instead of changing the goals at all.
We have new board members, and there's a good example about the health, life, safety, implementation, and study.
2012, 2013, so like that.
Right, that was where I was
Yeah,
here for that part,
right.
yeah.
So instead of it, so that way if there's any work, they can go to the end and be able to see in one list, here are the things that have changed, instead of having the goals.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. We are now on page 10. Oh, and we got ISLIC. It is the Interstate School Leaders Licensure Consortium Professional Standards. Say that one word. There you go. Mhm. Okay. Now, Steve, anybody?
Mhm.
Okay, so we're standard 3, again, noting the standards, and then the indicators, evidence, and then comments. Page 11 is standard 4. Page 12 is standard 5. And 13 is standard 6.
So those indicators are the ISLIC indicators?
Yes, no wording was changed, I mean, I think it's in the,
So what happens?
Where are you?
I'm just looking, I just happened to turn to page 12. What happens if, it doesn't matter, if anyone doesn't agree with the ISLIC indicators?
Tell me in a different way. I'm sorry.
What if the person grading this
Mhm.
doesn't feel it's important that those ISLIC indicators are valid?
Well, there's comments from the board members, they can write, I don't feel that these are valid.
But how would that affect the score?
I don't think it would. One of the things that we talked about is this is a tool, and then we voted on the tool, the content is included, so if one board member doesn't, that's one member's opinion, but then that kind of, that reasoning would be to anything, so I don't think it's important, so I'm not gonna vote on this, or I think this is kind of important, so I'm gonna use it, as opposed to, as a board, we voted on this is a tool.
No, I understand that completely. I'm just thinking as a direction to anyone filling it out,
Mhm.
if there's something where, because these aren't native to us, you know, they're not our boards, so we're grading,
Our superintendent based upon the expectations
based
of
upon
a superintendent in Illinois, so I don't think.
those standards, but even though
Yeah.
they're just, and they're created by, I'm sorry, I'm not being, I'm really
It
curious.
is just fine, you're
Who is
asking
this
this
group
question.
that makes these standards? Because I'm just not familiar with them. I know we did them last year, but I don't know what they are.
I'm
what
not
it is.
sure, this was presented to us from the IASB.
I remember, but, I mean,
Okay.
she never told us who they
Right.
were either.
This is
so-
the,
So, the expectation, can I, and then
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
speak
sure,
to
go
this
ahead.
as well. This is a tool. And no, we're gonna go back to that whole thing, because we can honestly get very nitpicky
I don't
about
wanna get
where
nitpicky about it. I'm
coming-
just asking for when we
Right.
hand it out to all of our board members.
So when we
this-
hand it out to all of our board members, the expectation is, this is a tool that we voted on and agreed to as a board. You as a board member would be expected to evaluate our superintendent based upon these, whether you agree or not. That means the next time we evaluate the tool, and we look at it again, you can bring that up in, and we can question it. But the ISLIC standards were put in place, we received input from IASB, we received input from the superintendent, because he's actually the one that led me to it in the first place, because we were talking about, I actually was looking at the Oregon, initially, behaviors for superintendent, or not behaviors, but standards. So looking at how we are looking at, leaders have to be evaluated some way about what they do and how they do it.
Lisa, you're taking way too much time. I get all that. Thank you. You don't need to be, you
Okay,
really
but
don't need
I
to
wanna
be
be,
so.
I wanna be really
I'm just
clear.
clear. No,
so I have
you're not
questions.
unclear at all.
Okay.
I'm just thinking as we hand this out, and every board member has to have understand and have the exact same marching orders. And
Right.
that's the thing, is that would have to be clear. So if, there's just one on here that really complex. So I guess I would just say he did an awesome job at something that I think is really
There you go,
totally, okay.
there you go. If that's your opinion, yeah, he didn't offset, but that is, yeah. So we got a
But
comment.
so then that would be okay, but then this evaluation form, because we were gonna look at it over the summer and we never did, so, and obviously we don't have time to really, I agree that there isn't time to do the kind of evaluation that we probably would have wanted to do this summer. Will that go into the procedures?
Fabulous question. I just
And when we
came
get
right
to
into that,
procedures.
Because we actually just talked about that when you were out of the room, is that one of the things that is in the process, the appropriate process, and so for new members, that this should be reviewed in June, because we need to make sure that when the tool is still valid, itself, the content, the goals, everything else, so that when we do it, we are having these conversations now, and then there's not even little goofy things like the 2012 to 2013, which
Right.
we should have caught
Right.
in June had we done this evaluation.
So that'll be formalized in the procedures here.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and that was a really good comment to bring up, because that's one of the things we talked about. And this is really good because you're new, so you can say, this is not making sense to me, like the ISLIC piece.
Is it making sense to you?
Somewhat, yeah.
just,
Well, it's unfair because you weren't here with
Some
us.
Merrill,
other parts,
just to clarify, the ISLIC standards are the standards that all licensure for Illinois administrators are based upon. So,
Mhm.
for example, if you were to go through the principal prep program, or, what was the old Type 75, everything you do has to revolve around these 6 standards, and that you have met these standards. You're doing this, and that you have some preparation for this.
That's your goal to me.
Yeah, everything relates to this. So, and this is,
It's just like a doctor has.
right,
Right.
Now, you said that some of this is making sense and some of this is not. I mean, obviously, the goal is that it makes sense for all of us, so.
When I say not, it is as I go into doing it, I think I'll get a more of a feel, just like the ISLIC piece. I wanna take a closer look at that in order to be fair to, so that's the part that I gotta connect.
The content, or just, what does this mean, or how it's laid out, tell me more.
Again, as I go through doing it, I think it'll make more sense to me. I mean, because this is a little different from when you're evaluating somebody on a job outside of corporate America, in one sense, because there are tools that you use with that piece. Whereas we're going and using like the standards from the ISLLC, not real familiar with that. So that's what I'm saying, that's the piece I gotta put my hands around, and really, I wanna take a look at it So when I'm incorporating and doing that.
So to give you an idea, it is no different as far as you're evaluating someone based upon what they do and then how they do it. So then in corporate, you may have your corporate standards that your company comes up with, right?
Mhm.
Or you may have industry standards that an industry person. These are basically your industry standards for the education, for your leaders in education that will come up. So there you go.
Okay.
So I think that was probably a really good point that you just brought up. So I wouldn't take it too much like, what are these standards? They're just so different. No, they're leadership standards. And honestly, when you get into the content of it,
Mhm.
they're leadership standards, but they were built that way. So if you have questions about the content, ask those questions,
Mhm.
you know, more as you kind of get into them.
Mhm.
But as far as how it's set up, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a tool. It's an
Mhm.
opportunity for you to have a conversation.
Mhm.
And that's why we want to make the tool as fair as possible and open as possible,
Mhm.
so that each person can have a voice and have a conversation. But again, we're speaking to the superintendent as one board when we end.
Right, and in corporate America, in a different setting, we do annual. And even though this is annual, we're
Mhm.
taking what's in the contract, looking at what's here, this piece, which is a multi-year contract, instead of like doing an annual review. You do their annual review and, you know what I mean, some things can carry over, but it's a multi-year, so it's, when you're saying some things cannot change.
But you're still evaluating him, superintendent, on what they did and accomplished in that 1 year. So there's a multi-year thing,
Yeah.
but their accomplishments for 1 year.
Yeah.
Things like the 2012, 2013, that's not gonna make any sense. So it makes sense that we have an addendum to say that was done,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
not even relevant.
Yeah, okay.
So look at page 10, that's what I'm looking at. You have the standard 3, so that's what the standard is, okay? Then you look at those indicators. So the one is monitor and evaluate the management of operational systems. You're gonna be looking for that with the evidence that I provide.
Ooh, that's a big part. So, unlike, you know, like if you're somebody's manager and you see their day-to-day work, we're depending quite a bit on Craig to tell us, like, okay, so we're not in your day-to-day stuff, so give us some, what are you doing, what does it
Right.
look like?
Right.
So we are, so he does a self-evaluation, we'll get to process in a minute, so
Mhm.
that's gonna actually help you, and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't remember he did that, because some of the stuff may have been at the beginning of the year, and it really helps. Like, you know, that,
It'll
Yeah.
show, it'll point to
Yeah.
what's been done.
okay,
What did you ask you to evaluate yourself? What do you, what you feel you did, blah, 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 you know? And then, of course, they come and do it, or if you're doing it, you know, you're gonna go based on some of the things you've seen and, oh, you think you did excellent, you know, I agree, you did excellent in this area, or maybe you disagree or whatever, so it's
but it gives you,
interesting.
and it gives you an opportunity though to hear,
Right.
again, wonderful things that we, got a lot of stuff to do, and then there was stuff we did in the beginning of the year, and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure we did.
Yeah, you forget.
Right, right.
Shouldn't, but we did. So, going through the content part of it, what we did was walk through page by page the superintendent evaluation tool as it stands right now. And the recommendations that I'm hearing are to, most of them would be considered non-material, but there was one material that does help it, is to take out the word draft, that is still in there, spell out the word ISLIC, on the ISLIC standards, making sure that we do make a note about current Illinois state assessment as opposed to the ISET, and then information about the 2012, 2013, but we're going to do that by adding an addendum. So that may be coming as part of any tool, that there's always an addendum if there's something that changes from year to year, to note that we didn't take that in consideration, and it was purposely taken out or extracted or changed. But we are not changing his primary goal. Okay?
Also,
Page, please.
page 1, we were gonna put optional.
Oh, and optional.
Next to board expectations for part 2.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding content, questions, concerns? I know you have to go, we're going to go to.
That part's a little fast, but.
So we can, are we good?
Did you,
Go
are we going to insert, how is it optional under board expectations? Are we going to insert board expectations, or are they just individual? You know, it says optional, so board
Right.
expectations.
Right.
It's
We don't
remains
have any.
optional,
Right.
but is it a part we're just not going to do?
We don't do it unless we talk to them in the beginning of the
So
year.
then
in
should we
June.
just remove
Yes.
this?
Basically, the conversation last year, and actually input from IASB, was that if it's a section that could possibly be used 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, you keep it as optional. You can say insert
Then
was not
could I-
used.
Could I recommend that we remove any language on, I guess it's page 7, maybe? Could we remove language that says insert, for this year, that says insert board expectation? I think it should be, I understand it's a multi-year tool,
Mhm.
but I would like to see any language that could be confusing, just eliminate it, because it looks like it's incomplete. You know, it looks as though we're waiting to put some language into this, that, and we're not. So
Mhm.
we're actually not using it, so after, even after optional, we might want to say not to be used in 2015, 2016. I feel like the.
Option not exercised in 2015, so
I-
just
however-
anything.
Whatever you want to say, I think it needs to be clear that we're not using this piece this year.
Okay.
Because to me, optional says somebody can do it, somebody can't do it.
Right.
And you don't want a board member to take this home and put in their own expectations and then
Ah, okay, so
submit
you're
it.
saying clearly that this has to be a board thing,
Good
okay.
point.
And when you go
Okay.
back into the file, you'd want to say, we
Yep.
didn't do that this year.
So give me wording.
Why don't we have,
I mean, is everybody, I'm sorry, I'm just talking to Christine, is everybody okay with indicating year after year if we chose to use it or option? Because we're talking about the general tool right now. so-
I think that we should put maybe a little box up in the corner and then just have like a space for board president and for superintendent to just initial,
Not use this year or use
yeah,
this
not
year?
use this year, and just put the date. That way, it's very clear that we both are aware that we're not using it. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Christine,
something like,
does it work?
Oh, I'm, yeah, it's absolutely fine. Just a point. I didn't, and I apologize. I
Don't
thought you were
apologize,
talking
this is
about.
the good, this is,
But
that-
I
that's
thought you were
good.
talking about this year's tool instead of the.
No, but we're kind of doing both because this one wasn't done in June, so, you know, this is good, so.
Yeah, I would just want to make sure that it's very clear what we're filling out and what we're not filling out, so that everybody has this exact same information.
so maybe something kind of like this?
Yep, and so this option will not exercise this year, and you can just check it in and show.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I did was include on this page a box that can be checked if necessary that says this option was not exercised in this current review year. And then there's a part for the president and the board, the board president and superintendent, just initial, so that there's no question that this is not gonna be used. We're good? Ready to go?
Works for me.
Okay, cool. Change. Okay. That's awesome. Okay, any other questions on content before we move to process? Okay. If you, just to give you an idea, if you want to start with page 1, that's all we had down there. As far as procedure, I have one comment from a board member that was not able to make it, and this is the only one I received. This one was from John Simmons, and it says, in addition to the review of the tool, I would very much appreciate if the committee would address the process itself and come to the next meeting with a recommendation of specific timelines, responsibilities, and expectations tied to the same. As the appropriate evaluation of our super is one of the most important functions of the board, the process and timeline should be formalized with all members' support and willingness to commit to it. In my opinion, it is the agreed upon process that broke down last year, and I'd like to attempt to ensure that it doesn't happen again. I think the best way is to do this is to lay out a very specific and detailed process for review by the full board, and then vote for approval. Right there. And that's it. Okay, so that was the only comment I have. I haven't gotten anything from anybody else, so. Okay, so I just started. Uh-huh. These are just my notes. They're absolutely mean nothing to anybody except for that I do weird stuff like this when I have free time. We want to make this easier and not harder. And one of the things that I just learned now that is, this will not be in Google Docs. Is that right, Craig?
Well, it's not, we don't have it in Google. I mean, you can put it in Google Docs.
So I can create a Google Doc?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if we're talking about a particular process that can be repeatable over and over again, I think Google Docs is a great way to capture it. But is it something that there will be no question about the integrity of the system or anything being compromised? Because I don't use Google
Well,
Docs.
a
very much.
concern that comes up, you know, that's going around there is if things are put on email,
Yeah.
Google Doc, because you can always throw an email somewhere
Mhm.
with a confident, this highly sensitive information in here.
Right, so what is the recommendation then? Is that just that everybody completes it, types it up on themselves and has to hard copy it to somebody, or can we email it, or is it signed, I don't like email?
I wouldn't email.
Right, not email, so that's what I'm trying to figure
Yeah, I
out.
would not email at all.
First step in the process, we gotta get it started. So I'm trying to figure out, before you ask that, Craig, would the first step be review of current goals and evaluation in June? Should that be the first step? Or is that the last step?
What's in the board cycle?
I think that's the, yeah.
It's both.
It doesn't really matter.
I just gotta put it up, but I'm very
It's
anal,
circular.
I'm anal about where it belongs in the timeline though, so.
All right, well, say it again.
I just said I'm kind of anal about this.
No, about that, June?
June. So in June, we just make sure that when we start, it's like, hi, good to see you again, okay, this is what we're gonna review the superintendent on,
Right.
yay, that's June.
I would
Okay.
recommend, instead of just saying June,
Mhm.
that we start to say at the June board meeting.
Okay, great.
Then you're able to continue to add things like 1 week following, 2 weeks
Yes.
following, instead of putting in dates. That way it translates from year to year.
Yeah, okay, so first board, should we have a board meeting? When's that last?
We have 2 in June, 1 in July.
Okay, and that's pretty consistent, so first board meeting in June, does that make sense for your goals?
Right, first regular board meeting in June. Well, the regular board meeting in June.
That way it goes on the agenda.
Yeah.
That'd be executive session.
But, I mean, but just well, 2 things, because part of that is to discuss the tool and not the evaluation. The tool doesn't go on exactly.
No, you could put it on there to set up a,
I thought we were, I'm sorry, because I thought we were talking about the tool for June. It was just tool,
just the tool.
which we didn't do this, that was that didn't happen this year, was the tool was never discussed.
However, we have to do tool, and we also have to do content. So
They're
the-
2 separate things, yeah.
Yeah, so would that be the first board meeting, would we review the tool, the first board executive session, review of the content, that's what I'm asking.
I would think that for the tool, you throw it into ad hoc.
I agree,
I mean, that's,
just like we're doing now.
yeah,
So just said,
So
establish ad hoc meeting in
Appoint
June.
committee.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna get done quickly, but.
Well, you know what, okay, let me just back up then, I'm
We could
asking
do it
that,
earlier.
we could do it late, yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, that could be the end process, so after we finish all of this, the last thing we do then is to say, okay, now let's go through it again.
Let's do it
That
again,
way,
too.
that'll be done, so then to June, all we're focusing on is content, I mean, that actual stuff
You
is
could
there.
appoint the committee in March, you could appoint the committee as soon as you wanted to going forward. Then you'd have a presentation date for that committee to work toward.
So we're talking about, when is this process over?
It's all year long.
No, but I mean, when we actually have, because we do have to go through steps when it's like, okay, we have the evaluation, we have the conversation. When the final evaluation is sent into the file, it's done for this year, when does that happen?
Roughly, late, April, like around April 25th.
So maybe, I'm just putting this in for right now. So we could have a committee review in June. I mean, May.
May, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you put it as something that happens, well, you'd also have to decide, is this something in an election year where you want this to be something that
The new board.
the new board would get to see exactly, what this tool looks like in a few weeks after they come to the
And then
board?
we just see the goals of the superintendent. Woo! That would've been nice for you to see the goals in a really nice formal way, wouldn't it?
All right.
You're like, it wouldn't have been too much.
So,
You're
I feel like
saying the
five-year
new
plan,
board
the goals
would,
are just the 5-year
Look
plan,
at the
which
tool
is
and
always
everybody
everybody.
else. I don't know. include
yeah,
that.
yeah, I had a note written down, part of board orientation for sure.
But the committee would have to, I mean, yeah, be able to present it.
first the cow, sorry, in May, the ad hoc committee that met in May could then present this to the board
When?
during the May cow.
They have.
Right, June, I'm sorry.
Hmm? The June.
So, okay, the June, regular board meeting.
June board.
Right.
Cool.
So the cow, you could have it on there as an agenda, set up that ad hoc committee. Ad hoc committee meets in between and makes a recommendation to the full board on the first June board meeting, right?
First
Mhm.
board meeting in June. Okay, we'll go back to the top meeting in June. That was good. Okay. I'm gonna ask you again about this timeline, but we're saying at the cow, like the last cow in May, we then set up the committee meeting. There's an ad hoc committee meeting that happens between that time,
Mhm.
that they review it, with the expectation then that the presentation from the committee would be at the first board meeting to approve the tool for the year. Is that what it is?
Mhm.
Yeah, is that what you understand? No? Yes, no?
To approve the,
I don't know what, I'm just trying to make sure I'm capturing this right.
I don't even know that you need to be that
I-
specific. I think you've appointed, we would appoint a committee, and they would look at it. Obviously now, we probably wouldn't blow up an evaluation tool, because this one, I think, was designed to kind of take us through a contract. But I hate to limit the charge of that committee, so maybe they would have a couple suggestions, and they may say, this is great, we've got no changes, and we also suggest looking at, we don't know that it's the best, so we want to ask to extend our charge. So I don't think we want to put in really super limiting language. I think if we just said something along the lines of.
What was that limiting?
Well,
I
you
just
said,
said-
no,
oh.
because you said about present a.
I think they report.
No, I was asking, is it just report or is it
Oh,
just report
I would
or
say,
not?
I would say report, well.
They report out a review to
I'm just asking, I'm putting it in here, so what are they doing? Okay.
It doesn't matter.
report review of,
On committee review.
yeah.
Okay, all right, so that's kind of that, we just took it to the end, but that's May Cal meeting set up, a committee ad hoc will meet during that time to review the current tool. At the first board meeting in June, the tool will commit, the committee will present on the review. That's it. And that's the tool. Okay. The content then becomes reviewing the content of the superintendent evaluation goals and everything else would be also at that first exec session?
Craig, I'm not pushing you up, but it's 8:08.
I know. Thanks.
So does that mean in the evening, at the exec session, we're gonna review of the superintendent's actual goals in the tool? Now
Yes.
you're talking about how you're going to evaluate the superintendent, where you catch things that say, you know what, this was done last year, we need to change it, or the park is, ISAT is now this tool, and we need to put that in the addendum and all that stuff. And
Yes. By that June, regular board meeting, we should be clear about,
Okay.
yeah,
so that should be the exec session.
right.
Isn't that still a tool? I mean, we already would have done the formal evaluation. That would be done,
Well,
right? Isn't it? And I'm just looking at this timeline, timeline doesn't have times on it yet,
Right.
but it would be done by June.
what we done,
This whole filling out this form and having Craig fill out the form and,
will be done by April, like April.
so that'll be done. So I don't see the,
So we have to prepare for the
no,
next
no,
year.
but I don't see any reason why that's ever an exec. That's just a tool. Then it's a conversation only about a tool. Saying we're gonna put goals in it isn't, it's still not.
So to me, that's where the meat of it is. The tool is.
But that's
is
still
that.
not an executive session discussion.
Oh, we can talk about his goals and everything in open session?
You
It's
have the
an
goals in
open
front
session.
of you, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it. Okay, so when there's review of the.
You can't say how anyone's
Doing.
doing, but the fact that they have goals and what they are, those aren't public.
We just thought we'd done an exec session, so I didn't know. I mean, since that's only, keep having this conversation in an exec session.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't be.
Okay, didn't know that.
Because most of the goals, contract is public.
Right.
Goals are public, 5-year plan is public, all that is public.
Okay. Okay, cool, so that's part of that. So goals would be included. Okay. All right, then that means, now we're back to actually the review process. Craig, did I hear you say if we're not emailing, the safest way for us to do this is to put them in Google Docs, or no? Create a Google Doc.
Why don't, if they're in, I think that maybe if everyone got a thumb drive, that would be,
That sounds very unsafe to me.
well, I mean,
That sounds very, very unsafe.
Well, I mean, would you want a regular,
Was there any question about the Google Docs last year? Yeah,
I didn't deal with them.
which is why I was asking those questions earlier that I had.
I just know when I do a Google Doc, I mean, I can see who I share with, but
So I have to ask, so, I mean, if I get training and putting it up, I'm taking on this accountability, or this role is taking on that accountability. Me being in this role right now, I can do it, I just need to know, get some, and put it in there. That's the safest and the most, best way to do it. It worked extremely well for me last year, I don't know about anybody else, because I could get it done, it was in there, and then they consolidated and I didn't have to worry about it. So we're good with doing that. I would suggest we
I
continue.
think a Google Doc would be fine.
Okay,
You share that with him, but emailing results is,
not good.
is dangerous.
That's why you see hard copy on here, and you'll see that doing that. So does anybody have any questions, or, then the first step in this process should be that the, board secretary ensures that the Google Docs is ready to go. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Merle? If you don't know how to do Google Docs, I'll show you.
Okay.
It's very easy and
it's,
wonderful.
it's remarkably,
I know because my child taught me. Okay, so Google Docs, so the first thing we have on the timeline is that, and I don't know where this starts. The board secretary, using board docs, enters the superintendent's goals as they are, or if they're there, basically we'll be carrying them over, any changes into the evaluation tool. Yeah, that's it. The superintendent goals entered into evaluation tool by board secretary using Google Docs. When should this be done? Steve, if you're looking at the timeline,
yeah,
without putting exact dates in, it's just we can back up.
okay, so which number is it we're talking about now?
We're just starting, this isn't.
Okay, superintendent completes self-evaluation, self-assessment, and provides evidence to support. Okay, so that was,
That was, but we have to put them, we need to get them in Google Docs first. We need to get everything in Google Docs.
okay.
I
so-
don't do mine in Google Docs, I just put on a hard copy and give all my information to the board.
I'll see yours a hard copy. Hard copy? The copy?
Because if not, you would share, I would be part of that and I could read
Okay.
information.
So do we see Craig's self-evaluation, including his scores before, do board members see that before they score it? Because that seems backward. to me.
Yes,
That you put it, seeing this before you score?
I wouldn't want to see his scores before I score. I've never done, I
No,
mean, I would
so
never
last
want
year
to
we-
evaluate someone and know what they've already, I'd want to see the evidence so I can make my own decisions, but I wouldn't want to know what, that you thought, that you thought you were very, very mediocre in this category when I thought, it just would cloud my opinion.
this is how things are done in schools where teachers, administrators, I mean, you do the self-evaluation, you turn that in, and then your superior responds to that. Part of it is you want to see if there's any disparity between how somebody feels they're doing and how the evaluator thinks that they're
Which is
doing.
usually why I always did and I never worked in schools, I only worked in the public sector, and private sector, never in schools though. It's why we always did them independently, and then your supervisor, you do them independently, and then you look and see what the score is. I mean, I'm not gonna fight for it, it just seems,
So,
it seems
I think that's-
limiting to do it that way.
That could be one train of thought. There is also a train of thought that some managers and, actually, I think every company I was in, we saw the self-evaluations came in first. And it was because, you know what, I may not know everything as a manager. I really might be missing something, and it does help me to understand that if I was gonna rate them a 2 and they said a 4, let's talk about why. Let me look at that
But
evidence.
see, we always did that during the narrative conversation,
Yeah.
so I always did it, and I would see my employees.
Yeah.
But I did mine independently,
Yeah.
so my judgment was never colored by what they scored themselves. Then I would look at it, and then we'd have that talk. You know, you say you got a 5, I say you got a 2, here's the evidence.
Yeah.
The evidence doesn't support your 5, or did I miss something?
Mhm.
But I don't wanna know they gave themselves a 5
Mhm.
before I score it. I just think I think it colors your opinion.
Okay.
Can I interrupt? I have to go, I apologize. One thing I do need to know is when do you need my information?
Doesn't the 19th?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The 19th is a Friday, right?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Could I request doing it at the cow meeting, just hand it out then, or else I'm gonna have to deliver everything to everyone?
When is the county?
Hold on.
22nd, it's the next one.
Yeah, that's fine.
You guys
with me.
okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, that's the only thing I need.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Sorry, I didn't get
Deb,
to-
it shouldn't be too much longer, right? Sorry,
We get it.
so, we will
Thank you.
continue. All right, you just, I've got interviews all day tomorrow, we're talking Friday?
Yep,
Okay,
thank you.
great, thanks, everybody.
And I'll type all of this stuff and get them tracked out, so.
Okay, all right, thank you,
Drive
Thank you.
safe.
thanks.
Okay, Meryl, I'm sorry, your opinion, so we have, the opinion that should go later on with the self-evaluation after we complete ours.
Mhm.
And then I think you were of a different mind. I've seen it done both ways.
I just think it
don't
allows it to be done simultaneously, then we're not waiting to get his,
really-
I mean, we could have been working on this already.
Okay,
It hadn't
here's-
been agreed upon,
here's-
because we had all the documentation, so
here's-
now we're waiting.
Here's the logic behind that though. Ultimately, we hire the superintendent because he is an expert in a field that theoretically the board has no expertise in at all. So, and to the point of, if you don't recognize, and even looking at, some of Meryl's questions about, well, the ASIC standards, you're not familiar with that. If you don't have anything to go on, then it's gonna be very difficult to answer those questions.
But you provide us with the ISLIC standards, you provide us with the 5-year, I mean, because we have background
Right.
information. His background information is provided to every board member to complete this with. All I'm saying is, why would we have his scores? Isn't it, aren't we filling out an evaluation, and then he's filling out an evaluation, and then we would look at both of those, and that would be the board there's also no space in here for
what?
board conversation.
Yes, the first one.
No.
Board evaluation conversation?
The
Number
board
9?
completes it, provides the rating, the president consolidates it for review by the superintendent. So it's not done till after,
Yeah, board president consolidates, individual evaluations. These are mine, first of all, these are mine, so.
but this is kind of how we did it last year. Well, kind of,
No, this-
no, it's not quite.
No.
We did, but then there were pieces that got out of order last year, so.
Okay,
Each board member completes the evaluation, providing numerical data. Board president consolidates individual evaluation into one document for review by the superintendent. Board secretary prints out consolidated summary with ratings to present to presidents, so that, to what Craig said, he doesn't want to individual. Board president analyzes data, presents modes, areas where modes do not exist, and comments via hard copy to superintendent and board. And then the board evaluation has a conversation around communications around areas where we did have a mode. So again, not clouding each other's judgment, discussion in areas where we don't have a mode. Come to an agreement on an overall rating, where overall rating is not clear. So where is it?
But that would be after the superintendent has already seen everything, then the board would come, the way this is written. Then the board
Okay,
would come to.
superintendent. Yes, I'm
So
sorry.
I would think that we would, so I would just
No, you're right.
think
Okay,
that
okay.
we would fill out an evaluation.
Yep.
He would fill out his evaluation.
Right.
We as a board would sit down and look at those together. Then we would come up with our final evaluation and then present that to the superintendent and then have a board discussion. There's no, what I'm saying is there's no spot in here for just the board.
You're right. I was trying to type it against time. This was the board president giving hard copies to the board. The superintendent was not supposed
I'm
to.
sorry, which
On line 8,
Okay, okay.
where I have, the owner is the board president,
So-
gives hard copies to the board. That superintendent, I made a mistake, it says board
Okay.
president to analyze, presents modes, areas, comments via hard copy to the board. That was not supposed to be superintendent.
Okay, so then it's board evaluation.
Conversations, to say, okay, now we all have them, because one of the questions you
Okay.
had, which I thought was really good last year, and was you, that said, okay, so did we all each get to see comments and questions so we can have a conversation?
Right.
So that was this conversation now, yes.
Right, because it would be common practice for a group to then maybe reflect and adjust
Yes.
some scoring
Yep.
depending on comments from their
Now, one of the
Peers.
comments
Peers.
that came up too, though, and let's just be very, because so we are not having a 12-hour evaluation meeting, and this, we talked about this last year, is during that communication meeting, where we have a mode, that wasn't the conversation, it was, I'm just making this up, we have 6 areas to review, and I know it's not more than that. These 3 areas, we already have a mode, so we have a rating. That those were not the areas for discussion, it was, okay, and then we have these 4 areas where there is no mode present, let's talk about what that rating should be.
Oh, okay, then we should formalize that, and I think that's, you mean, so if everybody pretty much says this is a
A
a
4
4,
here, right.
it's a 4, we've got nothing to talk
We
about.
have nothing to talk about, even if that one
Yeah,
person.
I just think we need to write that down. Presents modes, areas where no, well, there's always a mode.
No, there's not always a mode, because we had several situations where we didn't have a mode, because it
So-
would be 2, 2, 2,
But
and
there's 7 of us, so is a mode, how
The
many
mode,
makes a
majority.
mode?
Pretty much 3, you're gonna have 3.
Okay.
Unless you have 3 threes, and then you still don't have a mode. It is the most common, so when you
And-
have,
Yeah,
we had situations where we had, I remember one, we had like 2 4s, 2 3s, 2 2s, and then somebody else. We did not have a mode.
okay, all right, so, okay. All right, so there's a mode, when there's no mode,
That's when we need to discuss it and. we
presents
need to
modes,
change.
areas where no modes exists, and comments. All right, so we just need to,
Say it better.
unfortunately, it ends up being longer, and I hate longer, but, yeah.
Well, say better, believe me.
No, not that, it's just, it has to be longer, right? It's gotta be more detailed. Analyzes data, modes, every section. Hold on, let me.
It's updating. All right.
Sorry, go. Well, I mean, I just, do we wanna say something around? A mode is derived for each. Is section appropriate to say?
Yeah, because I'm saying something else, like, is it a
All right,
section, is it a?
For
goal?
sections, I don't know, yeah, you don't wanna say line item.
No.
Sections where no mode exists.
Wait, where? No, of this, go ahead.
The board will, I don't
Discuss, I mean, we gotta come to a mode, we gotta get a
know,
mode.
will, yeah.
Okay, are we talking about, line
Number
3 here?
8.
Board president consolidates summaries into one document for review by board?
We're on 8
Yeah, my number's off too.
with the data.
Okay, so looking at the tool itself,
Mhm. And take the superintendent off there, because I screwed that.
right, so it should read, all right, so.
Board president analyzes data, it's his job to put together, like, okay, this, coming through it, we got modes. So a mode is derived for each section. Where there is no mode, board discusses ad nauseam until we get one, I'm just kidding.
There you go. No, that's pretty good, there you go.
Superintendent. Chief board.
Oh, do we get one? There.
All right.
Board-
So would this document
Communication
then,
area where-
would it look like the board president then would to every board member give this tool with under, there would be, well, obviously we have the evidence, so it probably wouldn't be specifics, but comments 1 through 7 where comments were made,
Mhm.
and then
The mode, if there's a mode.
would we see the individuals, like 1 through 7 individual
Because it wasn't a
scores?
secret.
And the mode circled, so that's what we would get, so we would be looking at a document that showed all 7 scores.
Did he give it, do we have one last year, we just talked about it, did we? I thought we got it out there, but I cannot tell you for sure.
You got this?
Let's
Oh, we did get one.
Yeah,
For sake of doing a good job, let's not, I forgot how we did it last year, let's
Yeah.
do it right this year.
we did,
Um,
we got this as well.
Oh, we did get, I remember that, that was
Yeah.
good, that one was good.
and then a number got made up, so, yes, anything like that, but so we would see everything with the individual, any individual comments, so we could see,
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay,
everything
and
like
then
that.
there's a summary report.
And then it would have each number, each one of those
It
then.
looks like this. So when the board president and the vice president meet with the superintendent, they provide this summary, but they also provide all of the individual evaluations as well, so that the superintendent can see what individual board members had to comment.
Right, you give him everything you give the board, he doesn't say
Right.
anything the board doesn't see, so that's what we're talking about, is what are you gonna show the board?
So the board, when they have their,
When we,
before they meet, have their, they decide on, okay, here's where we have some discrepancies. they get this document where they can see, these are all of the areas where, there is some sort of, you know, agreement, and there's some sort of discrepancies, and then from this document, they have time to review, what other people said, so that in the meeting, they can say, I disagree with you, or I completely agree with you, or I never thought of it that way, or, you know, maybe I would like to see it more this way.
And it was only on the places where we had no mode, because if we went through each one, we would have been there forever. So we had a mode, that was it, this was the
But we're
rating.
gonna see all the
we're
comments,
gonna
all
see
the
all the
scores
comments.
and the
Yeah,
vote.
everybody gets to see what everyone else says.
Yeah. So this is full transparency in that process for us and then for.
Right.
for
So I think that's the appropriate
And-
way to do it, so I think that language covers that.
This gives.
Make sure I got it. I got, a mode is derived for each section. Where there is no mode, the board, I said discusses ad nauseum. Come on, give me a, the board discusses until a mode is
review.
reached.
Yeah,
A score.
if there's,
Just a score.
Okay.
yeah, so it comes up with, you know, makes, ultimately it comes down to.
Agrees upon a score.
Yeah, what does the majority of the board think is, you know, it should be. So, and this also safeguards so that if, you know, Timmy says, well, I really wanted Parker painted, blue and gold, and it wasn't, I think it goes against his life safety thing, because now it's a harder school to see. The rest of us might say, Timmy, that's ridiculous, you know, let's talk about this, and she might then say, okay, you're right, and then acquiesce, and we can move on. But this way, it just allows for
Can you show me that, please?
some sort of final conversation as one person, so that, or one body, so that when the vice president and the president meet with the superintendent, that we don't have 7 voices talking at once. We have one summarized voice, by which he can then go back and find individual comments if he wants.
So what would be nice to do is this is why this was difficult last year, because the comments were so separated from the scores and the goals. So if you could figure out, if you could just put it back in this form, then everybody could see these on one
Sure.
page. Because this was an awkward, you know, you can see how this went. So you saw the goals
Yeah,
and then the
I got it.
scores, but then it was, I couldn't track down, and some people wrote books, so
Oh,
it was hard to
Okay.
go back there.
cool. Okay.
That would be good.
Okay, so let me go back into this, because I gotta fix a lot of stuff on here. So we have then the first thing is that the secretary put the evaluation tool in Google Docs. Simultaneously, the superintendent completes his evaluation, because he's gonna give it to us hard copy. We didn't complete the discussion though, about the board getting a copy of the self-evaluation. At the same time, before, after?
He's gonna give it to us Monday night, right?
Right, he's gonna give it to us
So
Monday
night.
it's a moot point now.
Okay. But as far as process is concerned then, so or maybe we just discuss this again next year, but okay.
We can go back.
That's good, okay. So the link, so you'll get a link to the Google Docs site from, I can send that out to everyone to
Mhm.
say, okay, it's up and running, and you can go in and do your thing. The board, Google Docs, each board member completes the evaluation, providing numerical, rating, and supportive.
Can you go back to 4?
Yes.
So it's linked to Google Docs site with superintendent current goals sent to board. Do we want to amend that to
Okay.
add any supporting information that is deemed necessary for the board to have? It should be in one spot. So what do we need? We need the new strategic plan. I mean, I know it's all on the
Okay.
website, but it would be
Any
easier
supporting
if you
documentation.
linked it. Yeah, so it's, what did we say, the ISLIC, do we need the ISLIC standards or a description of what the ISLIC standards are? I think maybe we do.
They're in here, I mean, that's it.
The standards are, but
Right.
what,
Or what they are, oh, a link to that
what
site
what
you're
it
saying.
is, so like Merle said, you don't know why they are or what they are.
Okay,
So-
last year, we also got a contract and the
Mhm.
superintendent's contract.
Mhm.
And,
Wait, so are we sending a link to all of these things so people can just go out there and look? I'm not asking, I'm just asking kind of what you all are asking for, because this is starting to be a whole lot of work on me, and I'm not trying to do all of that.
They can be hard copies, but
Yeah.
that's just what everybody will need to fill out an evaluation.
right.
But who's gonna be responsible for getting all this
No,
stuff? This
I
is
mean,
where I'm like,
Not
think-
Kathy anymore, we took care of that.
Yeah.
so, and that's fine, we need to make sure she's out of that problem.
Okay,
Yeah, just, we're not.
so we're gonna need this contract. You should have a copy of this contract if you don't have one. Everyone has one, right? Okay.
Mine is right here.
Alright.
All my stuff.
Maybe that's something someone can request.
And I think you really, the common practice has been that you make them all available under one spot. That way, everybody doesn't, no one, you don't have any board member who doesn't know that they should ask. They have it all, they've got the full and complete packet.
So the question I'm asking then, is this all a big old hard copy of, are we killing trees and sending them to everybody? Or is this some secure place where all of these things will be that I just send a link to?
So your 161 account, you've
Yeah.
got a Google, you
Doc.
can access Google Docs through your 161 account,
Right.
it's secured.
Right,
So that's what we should be doing this through, just talk to Tony.
okay, wait, let's back up. So Google Docs, I get the Google Docs for completing it. Should I also be putting all this other stuff, the link to this is in Google Docs as
It's all
well?
password, well, that's not even,
It's all
that's not
password
Google
protected,
Docs,
it's
it's just in Google Drive.
Right, okay, so then that's attached to that. So, okay, this is.
So
my
don't get
conversation.
hung up in in where it is. Google Docs is just, again, a place to
Okay.
store stuff. But we have a secure Google Drive for the district that we all have a password for. So that would be the entry
The place to
point
put it. I'm good
to
with
get
putting
all
everything
this
there.
stuff.
I'm asking this because Craig said something about, I don't know about, afraid of things floating around.
I don't blame them. I mean, I absolutely don't
So
blame them.
this is why I'm asking, we put all this stuff, I guess this is all public
Well,
stuff.
whatever's public,
It's
I mean, I think would be
Yeah.
fine. Anything that is,
But anything we complete, this whole evaluation is not public.
Right.
Correct.
So that's the. and
So we're not
comments and all that,
emailing
it's not.
absolutely anything, first of
No.
all, except for the link, I gotta email you guys the link, so you will get that link.
And there's no stuff in there that's secret, so that's absolutely fine too. You're absolutely fine. Don't panic over that one.
No panic, just making sure that I'm doing it right.
You are.
Yeah, so Google Docs, okay, so each board member will complete the packet, and then, but the link, oh, I'm sorry, so then I'm going back to 4.
Mhm.
Board secretary will email the link to the Google Docs site so they can complete it, as well as to the link to the Google Drive where we will upload the link to ISLIC, his contract, whatever else we need to do this. Okay, again, he will be giving us his evidence hard copy, so that's the only thing we'll be
Right.
chemistries on. Okay.
Well, and he gave us a majority of it, I would imagine.
For the year, actually.
Well, we always get it, and I don't really think we need any more, but, he gave us a huge pack. I would hope he's not gonna add too much more to it.
So then after that, the board will complete it, giving a numerical rating and supportive data. Do I need to put in here at all, because we had this discussion, but it's not in here, that the expectation is that there will be comments?
I think you can just leave it at each board member completes the evaluation.
Okay.
I don't think you need to. We
I-
have to, the evaluation includes numbers that we have to circle, and it includes comments that you have to put, and you don't have, I don't think you need to say anything else.
Except for the fact that sometimes, I mean, it's not, evaluations are hard for people, so this is, I'm not just doing it for this board, we're saying that this is something that carries forward. People sometimes put ratings, and it's not like it doesn't happen with no comments, if they feel, oh, look, I gave them a 3, 3's good, and they just leave it.
And if people don't, I mean, I
I think
can't
that's
make
their
people
choice.
put comments.
Do you think that's a choice?
Yeah, I think if somebody.
I think that's very unfair to the supervisor.
I think
But
it's
then-
unfair,
but then
but-
and I agree, and that's the discussion that you have if when some people turn those in and there's no mode, and you start talking, so what were your comments on that? How did you get to that number? But again, if one of your fellow board members says, I don't wanna say anything, they don't have to say anything.
And it's also kind of like,
Really
if
awful about that, but okay, I
But
got
I-
you.
they
you know,
didn't do it, I mean, it's the end of the expected period
It's
of
my
time.
controlling nature around evaluation, so I'm gonna stop.
I-
You're all correct, that it is a grown-up's
You just
responsibility.
have to complete the evaluation,
Thank you.
period.
And I hope that you understand that means, I can't put anything in there. Okay, fine, I'll do that. Then the next step is board president in Google Docs, then board president consolidates individual evaluations and puts them in one document for review by, that's wrong, by the board. Oh, I put this twice, that's why it's screwed up like that. Please ignore that. It is, the board president consolidates individual evaluation, and then the board
So-
secretary prints
So
it out.
period consolidates, individual evaluations,
Into one
period.
document, okay.
Which one?
Well, that's consolidate, that's what that
Number
means.
6,
Okay.
consolidates individual evaluations, period.
Period, okay.
Then what?
Then
Then
the board
that's the next step.
Then the board secretary prints out the consolidated summary with ratings to present. This is wrong, that's wrong. Board president, that's wrong.
So all you need to say, I think all you're trying to say, and I feel badly, this was a lot. You got stuck in a maze. I think all you were saying was, the president's putting all this stuff together, and then all that stuff is going to the board members to look at. Is that
Yes.
correct? Is that the next step?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
Then he said, so I need to be out of this.
step out of this.
Yeah.
Board president consolidates individual evaluations, period, and shares hard copy with each board member.
I'll make that one thing.
And then
Okay.
that's gonna be a when and where question.
All right.
Probably at a board meeting would be the place. Unless you want to bring them to everyone's homes, but then you have to make sure that everyone is at their home to get it from you, because you don't wanna stick it through anybody's door slot. You don't wanna leave it on anybody's front porch.
When did we say we're
And we haven't done that yet. We haven't done any of those timelines yet. So I think that's it, right? You don't have to say with ratings or anything. He consolidates them and he delivers them.
Yep.
The only question is where that handoff takes place.
Yep. I like the fact at a board meeting because it does take any, just side note, we used to get, when you did the financials, we used to get this big scary packet on your porch sometimes, laid there where anybody could take it.
Packet, box.
It was box. And we, you know, it's getting away from that piece of it, and if we're at a public meeting, right here, that's just kind of.
Because
My
what
friend gave it to us at the meeting, which was best, because she was able to put it into our hands.
In our hands.
So what that does then is it allows you to establish a date at X board meeting,
And, yeah.
and then there's no discussion then, because every board member takes it home. Every board member has until whenever, the next evaluation meeting or whatever is set then,
Mhm.
to review. And every board member is then expected to have done all of that.
Right.
So they come to whenever that next meeting is prepared for
The discussion.
the
conversation.
evaluation conversation. I like the alliteration of
Yeah,
that.
that's
I
right.
love that. Or
Isn't
the
that-
back end of alliteration, whatever that might be. And then you can take out for the conversation. I don't even think you need the where modes exist, because we already highlighted, we got that covered, right?
Wait, where did I, but I was putting in this one, that's where it was.
Oh, is that where you're
This
gonna?
is where-
But, okay,
And that's why I'm putting these two sentences, a mode is derived for each section, where no mode exists, the board could discuss
up
it
there.
until a score is agreed upon.
okay. Oh, well, so I'm looking at the red and the black at the 8 and the 9. So then on 9 too, it says communication of areas where mode exists. So
So
we're
it'd be
just
something
putting that in
like-
one spot, right?
Yes,
Okay.
where else were you talking about putting, where did I?
Well, no, it says it up on 8, presents modes, areas where no modes exist, and comments via
Oh.
hard copy. So we
Yeah.
just,
Okay,
I can take that out.
so then by March 14th, looking at the board meetings,
March 14th.
um,
I'm just gonna back to the restaurant, please.
can we
I
finish
do
all
too.
the actions before you start looking at the timelines?
Just, if you say anything, just type.
you know what, I can use that.
Oh, can you just take us?
Okay, potty break.
Yeah, just.
Potty break.
I know, I gotta go, too, so I'm not gonna hold this. Easy.
Don't need candy.
Yeah, you're right. Keep me up.
Oh.
Oh, everybody
Oh,
gets
wait.
a hard copy, they'll get it at the board meeting. And so then the next piece is board discussion, and then where does the superintendent get pulled in? Does he, that's the thing, is it that, so come to agreement, board evaluation, so that 9 is that board talk, right?
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
So then when does then
this-
the next piece is when does the superintendent get it? Does he,
Then he gets where we come out with that, and and
So-
the expectation is that he will provide a response to it?
so who gives it to him then? That's the piece that has to be codified,
Yeah.
and when, right?
Yeah, you know what, last year, we had him come in right after we had that conversation, because we didn't have a lot of time for that. This is kind of the breakdown piece of it. Like, I remember we had the conversation, you
Okay.
remember? And
Well,
then-
I really don't, because I know that they met with him individually.
I don't think I remember
Craig and
that.
John met Greg.
Before? It was Greg and John.
Greg and John met with Craig.
Right. Right.
But
Okay, but you said we'll
I
go
don't-
back there, we're going forward, so.
No, but I
Yeah.
don't know, we had our conversation, I don't know that he came in and talked with us before they went, that wouldn't make sense.
He
He came in after.
He came in after, that's
After,
he came in.
so that's the piece that's missing, that we
Here.
have to,
Superintendent provides response to evaluation.
but he hasn't got it yet.
Right, he should see it, so that's, superintendent response, okay. Oh, that's because I screwed it up here, okay.
That's okay, it's just like after 9,
Yeah.
we have to decide how does he get it?
Does
right?
the
That's
board
the next point.
president, because this is not his final evaluation, because we have a second time where we meet, because the expectation was that once he gets our evaluation, he may have a response to it, disagree, agree, may add some more, and then we're coming back and discussing it again, because somebody might change their rating based upon, oh, I missed that piece of it, he told me this, and there may be some discussion. Because even in our document, we have here, let's go back to the, remember, this is mine, let's go back to, go on here to page 1. This is 6 and 7. 7 specifically. It says board meets again, ratings may change.
Right, but it's got, but see, this is, and this was where this was, we
Yep.
went around with this last year.
Okay.
It was the board president consolidates them, the president, the vice president, the superintendent.
Yep.
Review the document. So
Yep.
there's no board, there was
There was no
no, so
board
we,
discussion.
so now we're at,
We got board discussion in
we
here.
put board discussion in, so then are you saying,
Then the president and the vice president then meet with the
then they
superintendent.
review that with the superintendent?
That's our 13 that goes back up.
Okay,
13 becomes our 10. And then the superintendent provides a response to his evaluation to the board president. Or to the board. Can you just send it to the board?
yeah, I don't
Just
know
send it
why
to
we
the
would
board.
do that, yeah, I
To the
agree.
board.
And are we talking what kind of response? Is that just an oral response, or is that a written response?
I don't know.
And we should probably,
I don't know.
and maybe instead of saying response, we should just say superintendent
Okay, so we're,
meets with.
Oh, I'm sorry, we were, when I had to run out, we were at 9.
okay,
So at 9, that's when the board is the discussion. After we kind of get all that together, we got our numbers, we got our ratings, blah, blah, blah. You and Timmy,
mm-hmm,
now, excuse me, I gotta go back to positions. The board president and the board vice president have a conversation with the superintendent to present the evaluation.
right,
That way, probably superintendent gets digested, think about it, and
Mhm.
respond, and that's where we stopped by saying, okay, maybe we shouldn't say response, and then, what was that?
I was saying, if what we're going to do is have him meet with us, then that's what it should just say. Superintendent meets with the board to
Okay.
discuss.
Okay.
And we
So
should just
giving
be
us
specific.
feedback, he's giving us feedback, man.
I think it's when we all have the opportunity to sit down and talk together.
wait,
Yeah, but
so,
don't you think that something should be, you know, in conversations, things can get missed, lost, forgotten. Like maybe his feedback kind of be written too, you know, to the points, or, you know what I mean, to highlight the points of, instead of saying, I can come in here and we can say, well, I really don't agree with this, blah, 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 blah.
Well, I guess it would depend on what those two things look like. You know, so you'd hate to have to, it would depend on what that looks like. Merle's point is a good one.
But things get lost, I mean, people forget. I mean, are we gonna have recorders on at all time, you know what I'm
Wait a minute.
saying?
Yes, we do have recorders on it all the
can we
time.
back up a
We
little
can
bit?
look and listen to them, yeah.
Okay, so, going back to 9, board evaluation conversation. Conversation of areas where,
Well, a little change, but that's it, yes.
okay,
We get a mold and, not, you know,
right.
conversation.
Then superintendent provides response to board president. Okay, so we put in there that,
The point was made that they can't, superintendent can't provide a response that they haven't seen yet with
right,
the
vice
evaluations.
president plus,
So 13 goes up between 9 and 10.
okay. Right,
So the superintendent provides a response to the evaluation, and now we're talking about now how is that done? Is it just coming
Okay.
back in and talking to us, or is it there's something that is written so that there is nothing that's lost in translation and conversation? Go
okay.
ahead.
Now, last year, he came in and he talked to us after after John and Greg met with Craig.
Mhm.
And then, at that point during that meeting, well, maybe I shouldn't, okay. At that point, he was given an opportunity to talk to the board about a few things in general. And then from there, he did go and he provided a
Well,
written
let's talk
rebuttal.
about, yeah, the tool, though, let's not talk about, but this is not about a person, this is about the tool and the
Right.
process. I'm just being very careful, because one.
So I think you
Right.
could offer the option for a superintendent that, see, then the only problem that I see with it, that we can't, that we need to solve is an endless loop of call and response.
Well,
So we've given an evaluation, then I would think, here it is, the superintendent would come back. Any employee is welcome to
Respond.
respond,
Mhm.
but I don't know that, and we're done.
Right.
I mean, we are done. If,
But I thought we do it in a
But,
second.
okay.
We don't have to
So-
do that.
We don't.
The challenge
Okay.
was, I think, there was a step last year missed, and I think it either was we didn't have, we didn't have time to discuss as a board. That's what that was. The
Okay.
first, when we got it, we were talking to the superintendent, so it was like,
Yeah, it was an
so there was not an
less
opportunity
than
for us.
desire, it was an
Yeah.
inopportune way to do an evaluation.
Well, this was, yeah, we didn't have a chance to discuss, so we actually don't need a second meeting. You're probably right, or who
Okay.
that said
Yeah.
that.
So-
That-
Because, and
Wait a minute.
that dilutes the
Okay.
rating of the board.
So this is how it went last year, where the superintendent got his evaluation from John and Greg, and that represented, this is the summative evaluation of the board. This is after our entire process. This is our, and that was what this document was.
Right.
And then they explained it, and the superintendent's given an evaluation, they're given an opportunity to see individual comments, for which, you had time to digest it. And then the following board meeting, during the executive session, he then had the opportunity, or has the opportunity, to whoever it is, to speak generally and ask some questions back and forth. For example, using hypothetical, you asked me to, make this place a greener place. I put in solar panels, but, I didn't realize that you meant the trees. I mean, it's for discussion. But at that point, the evaluation's done. From there, he can then put a written rebuttal in his file, and then it's done.
As well as can any board member. But that's, Lisa, this gets to your point of, you want a tool to be a conversation
This is
tool.
a conversation.
And that's where we missed, that's where
Yeah.
we blew it. And this is the opportunity to say,
Yeah.
he comes back, that's the rich conversation that is the launching board for next year's
Yeah,
evaluation.
so, but it's
Right.
not a second event.
No.
Because one of the
No.
things that's in here now, which is incorrect, we gotta change that, that's what we're fixing, where it has board and superintendent review evaluation, board and superintendent review it, and then when they come back, weight and raise may change. That was only in there because we didn't get a chance to discuss as a board without him, really. We didn't get that opportunity. So what we're saying is, I think we're kind of all still saying this, it was no.
That's why it went in,
just-
and it
no,
went in
it was-
writing,
It was a little
yeah.
bit, it was very tight timeframe.
It was a tight timeframe.
Yes, so.
But, if I may, the part of the reason why it was a tight timeframe was that, as a board, we wanted to make sure that
It got done.
it got done before the new board is suddenly handed, okay, here's, finish the superintendent evaluation for us, would you? And the others are gone, but,
Either parties.
so, and that's why, I've been really insistent about keeping,
This timeline.
this timeline, because next year, that's what they're probably gonna run into.
But we're saying, I think we're all saying the same
Yeah.
thing now, which
Okay.
is, no, it's not,
Yeah.
this one
We
is
don't need
done,
that
it's
piece.
done. So we
Great,
just
yeah.
need
Good.
the superintendent, we gotta have our discussion,
Superintendent meets with the board.
meets with the board,
Mhm.
I mean, meets with the board president and the vice president to digest it
Right.
and everything else, then he meets with the board.
Hmm?
Right.
We can have a discussion, but the rating isn't changed, it's just the
Right.
discussion piece
Right.
after
Yeah.
that, so we're not changing.
That's the, that's
And that's,
the
So-
learning
so, yeah,
piece.
His
12
rebuttal
is
is generally, his rebuttal probably will be on paper
It
and
might not be a
It doesn't
rebuttal,
have-
it might be an
there's-
agreement.
No,
Oh,
there's
okay.
no, it's not a rebuttal, I mean, really, there's no rebuttal.
It could just be a
It's-
thank you.
It's a.
Really appreciate all your great comments.
Yeah, there's no, yeah.
I
there's no
agree.
Rebuttal, yeah.
Okay.
Never saw myself that great.
But the superintendent, like
Thanks.
any employee, has an opportunity to put a written response to an evaluation in their file, along
Right.
with their
Mhm.
Okay.
file, and that's it. Always, always.
So that doesn't come at this point here, whatever he has to say, it doesn't come.
He doesn't have to walk in with it, I don't think, I mean, I'm not sure.
He doesn't
That's-
ever have to do it.
That's his
Oh, okay.
entire,
Okay.
if he
Okay.
doesn't want
Okay.
it, he doesn't have to.
You know how, you know what, I guess
Or
I'm back
she,
in the work
or
world thinking,
whoever's-
you know how people, I didn't agree with this, you know what I mean? And people, and I'm not gonna sign it without writing, so that's why, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, it's just
You know,
about,
it's not
That's
just
my
saying.
favorite, I'm not gonna sign it, it's still going to your file. Sign it. But okay, but yeah,
Okay,
but this is
I
So
got
then
it.
it ends there. And it ends with what, 14?
copy, it is
Evaluation.
14, copy of evaluation to council.
Why does it go to
and-
council? I think it just goes to file, I don't know
I think it
why
goes
we
to
would
file.
give an evaluation to council, that's the,
I don't know.
mm-mm.
With superintendent response, if applicable.
Copy of final evaluation and any corresponding, and any additional, and any associated documents to file. Right?
may I take just a moment to review this back to you so you can go ahead and say the right thing? Okay. Board we still don't have a timeline, but this is where we're going, so we can figure that out. Board secretary puts the evaluation tool into Google Docs at the same time simultaneously this year.
Mhm.
He's already doing the superintendent, gives a hard copy of his self-evaluation to the board. Excuse me. Board secretary will email a link to the Google Docs site and to the Google Doc drive containing any relevant supporting documentation to complete review. Board then goes into Google Docs to complete the evaluation. Board president goes into the Google Docs after we're finished and consolidates individual evaluations and presents the summary with analysis to the board.
Mm-hmm.
The board in person, the board in person, there's a board evaluation conversation. A mode is derived for each section. Where there is no mode, the board discusses until an agreed upon score. The board president and vice president meet with the superintendent in person to discuss evaluation. And the superintendent meets with the board to discuss evaluation. Board president puts, the final hard copy is delivered to the file. Wait, how do you deliver to the file? Who delivers it? Where's the file?
He has a personnel file.
I know, who keeps his personnel file?
It's kept here.
Maybe that's why it was to council. Oh, okay. Okay, so you just gave me a really weird part, and now I'm back to that's why it goes to council? Because,
It could, I wouldn't get hung up on that, it would just go to the appropriate place. And I'm not being flip with you, you'll find out the appropriate place to put it, and it will go there.
who puts it there?
The board secretary.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
somewhere. Okay.
But it doesn't go to any board member, those aren't safe, so that it's
Oh,
like.
Remember,
that's
last
not-
year, Leah took it.
So I take it,
Yes,
these-
that's what,
and
that was
I
Leah's final
hand it
action.
somewhere, and I stick it
Yes,
wherever it goes.
and then it goes back to HR,
Did I miss something?
over there.
And I may have, so just forgive me. How does he get the evaluation again?
Oh, he has an actual physical conversation, in-person conversation with the board president and vice president.
So
And
they
have
deliver
it.
it, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
We meet with them,
Change, okay.
or the,
At the risk of throwing one more thing in there,
Mhm.
I don't know that we have to keep saying Google Docs. It's just a secure site. You could
Secure
change your
site?
mind.
Like secure-
You might have a problem with this and might decide that sending a secure PDF is an easier thing to do because you can't, not because you can't do Google Docs, but one
I like
might.
secure site, because I use encrypted PDF files in which everybody has to have their own password to get in.
Right.
And that way you can
And-
email it to
and
somebody.
Tony might decide that that is an easy, a better way for
I
us
should
to do
ask
this.
him.
that's a good
I will
idea.
ask him.
Actually, I
I
like
said
that.
earlier.
Well, see, I thought you said,
No,
ask
I
him
said
how to
ask
use,
Tony.
how to use Google Docs.
No, I said ask Tony about our secure site that you need a password to get into. It's the same one we use for board docs.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, but I will also ask him,
Ask
what does
Tony.
he
He has
think?
all the passwords for that, and he could assign out passwords for that.
So my question to him though is, I will ask, what is the most secure way in which, so he
Ask,
may,
ask Craig, tell Craig you'd like to see if Tony can set up an access point for us with a secure access point for all of us. And I'm sure Craig would be thrilled to hear that that's how you wanted to do it. I would be, if I were him. Right? I mean,
we just use Google Docs
takes all the
last year.
burden off, well, right, and it probably wasn't.
I like secure site as well because that gives us the flexibility, a board, whoever that is,
Yes.
to change whatever that
Yes.
secure site to be the most secure at that
Because we
time.
know that things change constantly.
Yeah, and things can become better. Like
That's
I
right.
said, honestly, because of where I do and what I do, I actually, it's better for me because I can email stuff and I send a secure PDF.
Right.
Because you can have it and you can't get into it to save your life, right? You know, so,
So let's go to timeline.
all right, timelines, because,
We start with Monday night's meeting, right?
oh shoot, I'm sorry, I apologize. The last step in that process, it says president hard copies to the file, then there is a next step, and then that means at the May board meeting, at the May CAL, the last May CAL, a committee is designated to review the tool itself, to make sure everything still works, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
The committee meets during this time between then and the first meeting in Cal, we don't have a specific date, and then the first board meeting, the committee presents their report on their review. So that's the last
You
step.
might wanna add, just to formalize it, that whoever that committee is, that they, survey the 7 board members
Okay.
for their opinions on the, because that would be the start, right? You finish with an evaluation survey of the tool itself, and then they have something to work with. Actually, then they really do have something to work with, instead of 3 people with,
Yep.
only 3 individual experiences, then you've got,
Yeah, for the, okay, so I'm sorry, that's why, I'm sorry, because there were 3 more steps after that, which is review and, so the last step is that review and we're ready for the next year.
I think that's great.
Okay, now timeline.
Okay, so,
So you gave him Monday night to complete that self-assessment?
Too late.
22nd.
February 22nd.
On February 22nd.
So that's the cow, so that's the
That's the
February
cow.
cow, so that would be the first thing in that timeline.
So,
It's the assessment February, that's the date we know we have.
so February, but, okay, without putting exact dates in it, is it's the.
February cow.
February.
You can
cow,
just say
thank you.
February.
That's what I'm trying to get, February cow. And so I will have everything, that link to everybody else by February cow as well. Or do you want it before?
If not before,
Right, but I gotta have a deadline, not me, but the secretary should have a deadline, so they need to have
prior
it
to,
by the.
1 week prior to the February cow? I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out, I don't know, but
It should be, that should be able, honestly, to be something that should be able to be done in May, so.
I
it
would
should be
think
able-
that, I would think you could have it,
In January.
well, I really, this evaluation should be, you should be able to complete this evaluation in a week's time. There's no reason a board member can't complete this evaluation.
So we.
Yeah, last week
In
it
a
was
week's
6
time.
weeks
So-
or something.
So first, so then it should be the week before the February cow?
It should be, yeah, it really should be done a week before.
I'll do 2 weeks, and I wanna make sure that this is just.
I'm sorry, what should be done? The document should be sent out? I lost what you said. The
Yeah.
tool should be completed or the document should be sent out? Because I was saying
It
that
should
should
be
be sent
sent
out,
out.
So I'm putting for myself just 2 weeks prior to the February cow.
which would be the board meeting.
Huh, I'm working, February board meeting, so that's number 1, okay?
Actually, that's very nice. Then it goes on the agenda. Just that the
Mhm.
tool has been sent, then it's documented very nicely. I really like how that works out.
So February February board meeting, the email to the link,
So you can even say that Monday, right? Because this is all ready to go. Even if you can't send it out on February 8th, which is Monday night, that's our board meeting.
I can't send it out because I don't have a secure site that's not up, and I'm not sure.
Right,
how
and it hasn't been
works.
approved, but you can
Yeah.
put it on that agenda, and we're still on the timeline for next year.
Oh,
If,
just
you know, if we
say-
start out, you can say, this is what we're doing, this is when we're sending it out, you'll have it, because I'm gonna say 1 week before.
Oh, no, let's say 2 weeks, okay, you'll have it by,
If you,
I've got it, it's cool.
you're good, you won't get your wrist slapped for
I'm
building
not,
it
well,
in
I'm not
a
gonna
couple
be
days.
there on Monday,
It'll still go in the,
at the agenda.
Mhm.
Okay.
right? Steve, you'll announce at your,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll call Tony tomorrow. Okay, so then, okay, so we got the February board meeting, we got the February cow, so
so
the board
that's
needs
part
to
2
complete.
is the cow.
Yeah, so when does the board need to complete? 2 weeks after the February cow, or?
They really should,
Well, he's gonna turn it in at the cow, right?
yeah.
So I would think, just because this way you wouldn't see his scores yet, board members could have theirs completed, but then they'll see his. Now, do you wanna make that a rule, or do you wanna just say that that's a nice coincidental timeline?
Can we
And
go
then-
back to that conversation around?
Well, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, it won't change it. You just could, I could choose not to look at his evaluation until after I'm done scoring it. That's absolutely fine. That's a personal.
Well, the reason I'm asking that too is because, and this is just kind of a philosophical thing, so so you're right, so as I think about it, I do all my employees' evaluations without seeing them, I do them blind. However, before I finalize it, then I do
Right.
look at their self-evaluation to say,
Right,
oh, I was way off there, I was, nope, I don't agree with that.
right,
So before it becomes final and they see it,
right,
I now do see it.
right.
Okay, and that is a matter of choice, so somebody else might say, you know what, I need to see their self-evaluation first, because I'm right. And is that, do we care? Is that a process, is that an issue? Because then it determines,
You know how you let that thing go? That thing up here that consolidates and the individual, the things you wanted to see, I'm willing to let it go.
no, I like
I
this
am.
conversation
I think it's,
because-
I'm willing to let adults be adults. If you wanna look at what he said and you don't, I don't care.
So from a process standpoint, we're okay that we're still doing the same thing, because
Yes.
that would actually determine when we release self-evaluation to people.
Yes.
If we wanted to make it so hardcore.
I think it gives us all 2 weeks to get it done.
Yes.
And then it
Okay.
gives us an additional 2 weeks to look at his,
And decide
right? Is that how that would work then?
Yes.
He would turn his in,
on the cow,
On
February
the
cow,
cow.
and then we have 2 weeks to complete it,
and then we have 2 weeks to,
get it done.
to compare or review or whatever that is.
So that's 2 weeks after cow, which is the board,
Right.
So
Which
then
is the board.
the question is though,
March board. But-
when does the, so is that what we want to do? So that really gives us a whole month to do the evaluation. And is that
Correct,
too
which is
long?
That's a long time.
So do you want to say a
week.
week after? Then they would
February
have to
cow.
be submitted who, to the board president, is that correct, Steve?
Yes. So
And they
then-
have to. Are you, oh
I mean,
gosh,
hold on, you said submit, who submit what?
we have to get them to the board president. Are
Get
they,
what?
is the doc feeding into a
The
form?
Google Doc, it summarizes, it snatches everything together for them, but I don't know what the secure site is, I have to talk to Tony.
Right,
But yes.
so they have to be completed though.
They have
So
to be
last
completed.
year, they weren't completed.
Last
Okay.
year, it took,
So here's my question,
Next
and I
couple
don't care who didn't or why they didn't.
I
Are we willing to say
don't know.
they have to be done, and if they're not done, you don't get a say? Because I'm a mean and evil person, and I don't think, if you can't meet the timeline, if you don't care enough to get it done, you don't care enough to get it done. It's 3 solid weeks.
Yeah, that's 3 weeks.
It's 3 weeks.
I think
That's more than fair.
that's
for an
enough, because
evaluation.
other's it's gonna turn into 6 weeks, and so I'm
That's
still
what-
gonna do it the last
that's
night.
what's
and-
I've had a month to have to evaluate 20 people, one person, you kind
I
of should be
think
able
that
to.
should
But
be-
we, but we have to have a board agreement.
Yes,
And it has to be said publicly, and it has to be agreed to publicly.
Okay.
so is this a note, hold on, I like this emergency note down here, what is this? Must be by deadline, or you don't have a say?
That's it, that's done. Any evaluation not completed by 1 week, midnight, 1 week following, I don't know, gotta give it a time, I guess, will not be accepted,
Not be included in the final number.
not accepted. Because otherwise, if we don't have that board agreement, then it puts Steve in the position of having to tell someone, no, I can't take yours, or, well, okay, but get it to me tomorrow, and that's not fair.
So, and actually, you know, you can shut down systems after a certain time.
Yes, you can.
too. So you know. Okay, so I got timeline, we got February board meeting, February board meeting, the link goes out so you can start your evaluation. February Cal, you're gonna get his self-evaluations.
Okay,
1 week, I'm sorry.
okay, so,
1 week after February
Because
Cal.
then you would have it compiled by the March board
right,
meeting.
but if I got it by March 7th, I think it'll be fine.
Well,
Is that 1 week after
That would
February
be
Cal?
2 weeks after, and that would count for, okay, you had a bad week or something happened.
No, they'll have it for, Steve, they'll have it for 3 weeks. Nobody has a bad week, you may have a bad hour, but you know this is coming. This is in the calendar. There's
Okay,
no,
hold
What do you
on.
mean?
I'm not trying to make,
Wait.
I'm not trying to make up a
if we had
hard-
2 weeks from the time we get
Okay,
it, we get it
so-
at our February board meeting.
Okay.
He
February,
gives us
hold on,
his evaluation of the cow.
which is February
And if
22nd.
we said a week after, we're not looking at dates, we're looking at weeks. If we gave us 1 more week, that's 3 solid weeks that you would have to not only do your evaluation, but look at his.
Can I, let me
The
just-
materials don't change.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I do not wanna, just set a date just because I'm trying to be a hard ass to say, so, a couple things. I 100% agree with you, you don't need, that should be it. However, from the board president having to consolidate and saying, you know what, if I get them by the 7th, I'm fine. Besides the fact that we just kinda wanna be hard asses and get this done, what's the difference between if somebody wants to take 4 weeks and I wanna take 3? Yes, I think you're 100%
Because
right there,
you're
but that's my
assuming
opinion.
that you're gonna get these on the 7th and have them done by, what's the date of that board meeting?
The 14th.
So you got a week? Yeah, that's a,
To consolidate?
yeah.
How
We'll
can-
talk to Greg about how much work he had to put into that, because the document does it, but you need to format it and make sure we can read it right, and you don't know what's going on with your teaching, and you got family, and this is not your full-time job, so.
I think you're making a big mistake to say you'll, I think you give people 3 weeks and you put padding in, because you're not, this isn't your padding. This is the padding for whoever does this, and that's, you've gotta be
Okay,
realistic.
so what you're saying is that on the 8th, that's when your evaluation starts. And then,
You doing dates, I'm just going back to the calendar.
The first board
Okay.
meeting, yes.
I'm looking at dates because that's, I'm a date person.
But this
We're
date
looking-
is gonna
this
change.
I know that,
Okay.
but, so looking at this year,
Mhm.
what this means is, if on the 8th, your you would then send out the, before he gives us,
Oh, I'm sorry, you're back on February, yes, I will send out the link to Google Docs to
right,
say, here,
Right.
start your evaluation.
start the evaluation.
Right,
On a week later, or 2 weeks later, you're gonna get his self-evaluation.
right.
So that means that,
You actually have to have time, all that time to do it.
yeah,
It'll
and
be done,
then,
you have a week to.
and then when you get that on the 22nd,
You got a week to modify and look at it and say, oh, I
Mhm.
missed this, oh, I forgot that, let me change this. Oh, no, that stands, I got time to
Yep.
stick stuff in now.
okay. And then, so that would be 2 weeks, okay, so that's where you're getting 2 weeks, okay, I get it. And so then, from there, you're saying that they should have it done by the 29th?
I don't know the dates, I'm just saying a week later, they should be able to have.
That's a week later.
It's a week later.
A week later is a week later,
So,
yeah.
so then that would give you 2 weeks to actually compile.
Mhm.
Okay, we can do
And,
that.
and it's just because, again, this is you this year, right now.
Right,
Say this process starts to work really well, we're humming.
right,
4 years later, we have a new president who travels all the time.
right,
You want to give the person who has to administratively do this enough padding time to put it for everybody, because now everybody's waiting on that one person, and
Right.
that's not fair.
no, that's fine, I don't have a problem with that, it's, fine with me.
It's better for you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I just
so-
wanted to look at the time frame.
February board, first step, February Cal superintendent, 1 week after board stuff due,
Mhm.
finished, we can system closes 1 week after.
Okay,
1 week after the Cal. And then you will then consolidate it and have it for the
March board meeting?
March, what is it?
March
In this
14th.
case, it's the 14th, yeah.
Now we're getting into spring break.
We don't have a meeting we don't have a second meeting in March.
Next
Never?
meeting
No,
is,
Never, okay.
next meeting is.
Because it's always spring break.
Right, next meeting is April 11th.
So then April 11th would be the board. Okay, oh, it's March 14th is when you give it to us, I'm sorry.
Right.
Or that's, I can't say March 14th, I'm saying, what is that, the board meeting?
That's the
March?
board meeting.
Right.
Board meeting
Which means that you would have the meeting with the superintendent.
at the executive session.
Well, wait, the 14th week,
Oh, now that's
then
just our
we
conversation.
schedule, that means we have to have our meeting scheduled.
Oh, shoot, okay.
And I would suggest that as a separate meeting and not piggybacked onto a board meeting.
Like a special,
Yeah,
Ad hoc.
and it has to be scheduled for that week, and we do that at this meeting in February.
Ad
Right?
hoc, yeah, so that's ad hoc, and that's scheduled at March board
I
meeting?
would think we'd have to schedule, well, I would suggest scheduling it in February.
Yeah, in February, we can schedule that, we know, we know.
Yeah, yeah, I would suggest scheduling it at the February meeting, and it's that, probably that week.
Because then he has over spring break time and everything to kind of look through it and kind of good for him.
okay, when is spring break?
It is the 24th, is that Friday? March 24th, is that, I'm sorry, that's the
Okay,
23rd.
so
Fifth is a
it's-
Friday.
So it's the last week in March, right?
Always.
No, it's not the last week. Oh,
It's the
yes.
last week in March.
The last week in March.
Always the last week in
Yeah.
March. And if they ever change that, it'd be terrible, because you'd never remember.
Because I'm like, that's,
It's always it's been the best thing about our district, is it's always the last week in
and
March.
we always miss that last day of school. So I tell the kids, I'm sorry, because we leave, because playing fair is cheaper.
It's fine.
You've got one day before.
So then that gives us time to meet, for you and Timmy to meet with him. And then we meet again
When
in,
when
Wait a
do we
minute.
meet? So give me a second.
But we would be, as a board,
Right.
after looking at each other's,
we'll have that date set in
Evaluation.
February, right.
Right.
We're gonna set that the week of March 14th in
That's
this
an
case.
ad hoc meeting.
That's what we just said.
And then with the expectation that the board president and vice president will meet in person with the superintendent.
You'd have that meeting, you'll know what day our meeting is, and you and Timmy will set that meeting with him immediately following the meeting with the board, right? It's not that big a meeting.
right, yeah, that's,
Just handing it to
that's,
them.
right, that would do
Talk
that.
to them, Yeah. And then after that,
Wait a minute, hold on a second.
okay,
Okay, so, okay, so then, March 14th. My fingers aren't responding. Come on, there you go. So, March 14th, that week, or the following week, no, I guess that
That
week we'd have an ad hoc.
Yes.
So we'd all get together, we've looked at each other's stuff, we've had a day or two,
Yes.
and then we'd come to some sort of agreement.
But because
Right.
we'll have the reports back, we'll know what we have to talk about.
Right, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Right. And again, board members just have to agree to be fully prepared at that meeting.
Okay. Okay.
and I have a TBD by the board president, vice president, superintendent. God bless you, that's
Thank you.
determined by the outcome of the ad hoc, when you have those meeting together. And then
We might wanna put,
immediately following. Okay.
cause why not, right?
So he's gonna have to sit around and wait around for us to
No,
finish this
no, because
conversation
it's
now?
gonna have to be, a new document has to be created, because there isn't one. Remember that document we discussed? Some have modes, some may not have modes.
Oh, that's right, because we have to come up
So if
with.
that
So- That's
right.
changes, then that would have to, that would.
Well,
that
it's for
affects-
sure going, it's not gonna change, it has to be finalized, it's
Right.
not a final
It looked
document. So
pretty.
you go
You
home,
got a pretty document.
you
Yeah,
go
yeah.
home that night and finalize it, and then you meet with them ideally the next day.
Yeah, where it's just giving him, yes,
Yeah,
that
it would
part.
just turn into this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's gonna have no, well, yeah,
Right, plus the.
ratings.
Okay.
And
So that
then,
week.
okay, and then, so now we're kind of, where are we now?
So then I would
Superintendent.
think you would wait, then the next thing is he comes and sits down with all of us.
Talk to the board.
That allows you to wait until after spring break.
So,
The next board meeting is not till the 11th.
so first board meeting in April.
So he would meet with us.
We could do it prior to that board meeting, or we could
I would.
piggyback it onto that board
I would
meeting.
just piggyback.
And then, after that, we just put it in the file,
That's done.
and then the May, ooh, that runs right into the May, oh, we missed a cow. We're gonna
That's
have that.
okay.
That's okay. And then
You
May-
could talk about it at the cow, you could, if you wanted to appoint the committee at the cow, you could do that. I mean,
But this is for timeline.
it gives
to
you,
keep us
it
May.
gives you flexibility. It's okay to go earlier in the
Okay, and
timeline.
then the April
What a
25th.
delightful thing that would be.
Huh?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna,
Then we're done, April 11th, we're done.
I'm going to bed before I type this up.
Fresh.
Yeah, I'm looking, I got, because I'm not, this is me. Because I'm gonna have some, hey, here's one thing, I know that you all can't respond to me, but we're a committee, so I don't know, I need to get this back out to you, I need to consolidate this, get this back out to the folks who are sitting here to say,
Right.
is this right before I get it out to the board? I mean, before I give it to you for the board,
Yeah,
whatever.
so what are you saying?
I don't know how to, I can still send it to you, you just can't respond to me, right?
It has to be, you have to, the committee meeting, it's been 10 years since we had committees. The committee minutes either get approved at the next meeting of the committee, or they, but no, they get them, they have to go to the next board meeting to be approved.
The board
You can,
can come up.
yeah,
I-
they
What I'm
have to be
saying to you is
there.
I need to.
You
get
can
this
send
to
them
you
all out, yes, you can send them all out.
Because you need to say to me, you missed this, you didn't capture this right, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I got.
Yes.
You can
notes.
send it,
I can send this to the folks right here is what I'm asking you.
right, but
Can
you,
you respond to me individually?
No, yeah,
You-
yeah. No, yeah,
you can send it to,
What's the best way?
you can send it to us, I could let you know tomorrow morning.
No, it's not that big a deal. Yes, you can send the minutes out to everybody.
As long as you don't like send, like, you're not sending like a group email that we're responding to as a group.
Okay, so all I'm gonna do is to say, hey,
You're
great
just pushing
meeting
out
last,
information.
Yes.
great meeting last night, please review how I have captured this to make
Yes.
sure it accurately reflects what happened in the
Yes.
meeting. And then if there is something weird,
Call or
just call me or email
individually.
me individually.
You make those changes, then you bring those to the board meeting and we vote on them.
Now, since I'm not gonna be here, then I can just hand this to,
Somebody has to give the board, the committee
we
report,
need to give the committee report then.
All right.
Okay,
and then there's discussion.
there you go. Then we handle it from there.
Yep.
Are we good? Where are you got
Mhm.
quiet? Only one reason?
No. I'm just gonna look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I know, it was with my name. But I have it, I did listen, I got it, and then, but we'll see. I reckon that's what we did different. What the timing, my father, excuse me, I'm sorry. Hi, sweetie, I'm still in a meeting. Did you name me? What's going on? Yes, I will do that. You're welcome, bye. I'm sorry, forgive me. Okay. Okay, that's it. Are
Mhm.
there, oh, and sorry, let me just, so at least I can go through this agenda here. So we have gone through now content, and I will capture those appropriate changes, or recommendations for changes. And we went through the evaluation process, which was, guys, thank you, this was awesome, it was transparent, it was back and forth, it was good. I will put these recommendations in there and send them back out to you. Format, just real quickly, is there anything, does it look, feel okay to,
Looks fine. to
anything
me.
on the format?
I think format would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. The only thing is I will have to put on here at the, on the cover, the second revision date is, will be
Right,
one,
updated.
I mean, is two, what's today? No, because it would be the board meeting.
Right.
It would have to be approved pending,
Yeah.
so we can't do that, but it would be pending.
But you could just do revised and adopted.
Revised and adopted to 8, but then if
You
you're
can
not.
put today's revision date,
Yeah.
and then if it's adopted on the 8th, and if it's not, then we don't use it.
Okay, yeah.
Then we've got bigger problems if we don't adopt it on the 8th, and I don't think that will happen.
All right, I also, though, we'll do a process, and one of the things I'm gonna do would be reaching out to Tony to find out what the appropriate secured site is and a way to do this,
Mhm.
okay? But I'll reach out to Craig first to let him know I need to talk to him. Are there any other questions or concerns or recommendations that were not addressed in the review of a content, process, or format that you need to bring up now? That didn't fit in these?
Nope. Okay.
All right, then, my charge then as the chair is to document the activities. We had non-material changes, were small things like take out draft and things like this, but we also had some quite extensive material changes, which is Willie in the process. I will document those and then send those back to you so that we can get it to the board. With that, any other questions, comments?
Nope.
I make a motion that this, do I make a motion or do I ask for a motion?
You
I make a
can-
motion that this meeting of the ad hoc committee be adjourned at 9:25.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. Oh, do you have, who captured that?
You just have to put it in the minute. It all goes in your minutes of the meetings.
Okay.
The minute, that the meeting met, it was called order, that people were in attendance.
Guys are done?
Oh, and we're
Yes.
done. Thank you
Okay.
so very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, it